Chapter 91, Sending the Buddha. Inside the entire morning hall, there was not a sound, except for the screams of Ben Yaju. These big shots on the underworld looked at me in silence, and some even had a hint of fear on their faces. No one could believe that I would actually cut off Ben Yaju's hand. Now Ben Yaju was lying on the ground, screaming as he held his severed wrist, and the blood was flowing all over the floor. The scene was really shocking. Compared to these big shots who made a name for themselves by fighting and killing on the streets, I was just a newcomer. In their eyes, I am just a newbie who got lucky and was favored by Buddha, and who was backed by Meng Chong. When Buddha was still alive, they had to give me face, but now that Buddha is dead and Meng Chong can't hold these people back, they don't have to give me face. I know exactly what they are thinking. That's why I just struck and chopped off one of Bang Yaju's hands. I was establishing my authority. I wanted to show them that in the future, after Buddha is gone, I will be in charge of Shisha. Anyone who doesn't agree will suffer the same fate as Ben Yaju. You can reason with a gentleman, but these people here have all been hardened by the streets, and words simply won't threaten them. The best and most direct way to make them listen is to make them afraid. Let them know that I really dare to move them, and that I really can move them, and these people will be honest. I threw the machete on the ground, waved my hand, and Meng Chong handed me a pack of paper towels. I took out the tissue and carefully wiped the blood off my hands, and then wiped my face. Everyone was watching me, and the whole funeral hall was unusually quiet. None of these unruly big shots dared to speak, and they were all silent. Bang Yaju had fainted, and the ground was covered in blood. I wiped the blood off my face and waved to the younger brother behind Meng Chong. Take him to the hospital, don't let him die here. Two subordinates quickly stepped forward, picked up Bang Yagu and walked outside with his broken hand. The next moment, a subordinate immediately came over and started cleaning up the blood on the floor. I threw the tissue in my hand on the ground and coldly looked at the big bosses around me. Those people were now terrified and didn't dare to look me in the eye. They quickly turned their heads away when they saw my gaze. I will only say two things today. The first is that although Buddha is dead, I don't want anyone to break the rules he set down. The second thing is that from now on, I will be in charge of what happens on the lower road. When I finished, I looked around at the crowd again and said in a stern voice, I'm done talking. Who's for it, who's against it? Everyone looked at each other, you looked at me, I looked at you, and no one was willing to be the first to speak up. From now on, we'll listen to Ngu. If anyone breaks the rules, I, Meng Chong, will be the first to settle scores with him. Just as everyone was silent, Meng Chong turned around and said loudly to the crowd. I glanced at Meng Chong and nodded slightly. Although Meng Chong was a bit impulsive, he was not completely brainless. At this time, he should stand up. Just now, I had already established my authority, suppressing everyone so that they couldn't raise their heads, but they were definitely not convinced in their hearts. That's why no one has expressed their position. Meng Chong was the first to stand up and express his position, which is equivalent to pushing them into a corner, so they have no choice but to express their position. Listen to Ange, and everyone will listen to Ange in the future. At this time, a big boss in his 60s walked out and looked at me with a smile. Over time, I have come to know almost all the big bosses on the streets of Xia. I know his name is Li Qi, nicknamed Smiling Tiger, and he has 2 bars under his control. Smiling Tiger is just like his nickname in terms of his character. He smiles at everyone he meets, giving off an appearance of harmlessness. This person is very smart, and his forte is to adapt to the situation. It doesn't surprise me that he has come forward now. These big shots who have made their way in the underworld, although they all started out as punks, none of them are stupid to have reached this point today. Everyone understands the principle of singing whatever song befits the mountain. I agree, in the future, Brotherin will be the one calling the shots. Right, Brotherin is valued by Buddha, and now that Buddha is gone, everyone naturally has to listen to Brotherin. The Smiling Tiger stepped forward, and the group of big shots immediately began to express their opinions. The most important thing about getting into this business is making money, even though the gangsters made a name for themselves by fighting and killing. But if you can make money safely, who wants to live a life of bloodshed every day? The ruthlessness I just showed, and the strength of Yi Yuanba, made them all realize one thing: I really dare to move against them, and I can. It is obvious that none of the people here today are stupid. Well, I, Chong'an, have little experience, and it is rare for you big shots to give me face. I hope we can get along well in the future, and things like this will not happen again. I said to them with a smile. Everyone immediately came forward, smiling and exchanging pleasantries with me, and I smiled and exchanged pleasantries with the bigwigs. I knew that these guys, despite their outward smiles, probably cursed me in their hearts. But I didn't feel uncomfortable. Isn't this just how the world works? Smiling in person, but cursing behind your back. If it weren't for Yi Yuanba standing behind me, I believe these guys would have torn me to pieces today. The reason they are now politely calling me brethren is that they know full well that Yi Yuanba is a martial artist, and they can't afford to offend him, so they have to bow to him. Although I don't agree with it in my heart, I have to. This is the world of the martial arts, where the strong are respected, and the law of the jungle applies. Whoever is powerful has the right to speak, and can make the rules. Buddha once told me that this world of the martial arts is a place where people are eaten. If you don't have the strength, if you aren't ruthless enough, you will be eaten by the world of the martial arts, and there won't even be any leftovers. Today, I have shown them my strength and ruthlessness. From now on, I will set the rules here. Anyone who dares to disobey will suffer the same fate as Benjayaju. Buddha is buried in the cemetery. When he was buried, I led everyone in 3 bows in front of Buddha's tombstone. Looking at Buddha's photo on the tombstone, I felt a lot of emotions in my heart. Until now, I still don't want to believe that this old man who has taken care of me so much is really gone. Buddha, I hope you have a good journey. I will remember your teachings and continue on this path. I stood in front of Buddha's tombstone, looked at his photo, and said to myself in my heart. It was as if I were talking to him, and as if I were talking to myself. The path of life is never easy. One day you may rise to great heights, and the next you may fall into eternal damnation. How far can I go on this path? Chapter 92, Keeping an Appointment. Zhao Sihai. Buddha is laid to rest. The mourners have gradually left, leaving only me, Yi Yuanba, Zhao Yuejin and Meng Chong. Old 7 is still unconscious in the intensive care unit, and I don't know when he will wake up. I don't hurry to leave, but instead take out a cigarette and light it, looking at Buddha's tombstone and then glancing at the surrounding tombstones. Cemeteries are places where people can easily calm their minds. Out there we fight and kill each other for various interests, but inside cemeteries, people don't have so many thoughts. Because we all know in our hearts that this is where we will ultimately belong. Everyone feels a sense of awe in their hearts when they come to a cemetery. Have you found anything out? I turned my head and asked Zhao Yuejin and Meng Chong. Meng Chang's eyes were red and he shook his head. Zhao Yuejin also took out a cigarette and lit it, then spoke slowly. I've investigated a lot of people these days, but there's no motive, and no one has the ability to move Buddha. I exhaled a puff of smoke and nodded in silence. The result was not unexpected. I discussed it with Mu Shaowan these days. Although Buddha has been out of the game for more than 10 years, he has always been followed by Laochi, a martial artist. Ordinary people on the street simply don't dare, nor have the ability to move him. Therefore, the person who killed Buddha was definitely not a gangster, but someone from a higher level. Those people at that level are beyond Zhao Yuejin's reach. So I'm not surprised that Zhao Yuejin hasn't found any clues. Damn it, who was it who moved Buddha? Meng Chong looked at the photo on Buddha's tombstone and clenched his fists in anger. Buddha treated him like a father and a teacher. Meng Chong is a very emotional person, and now that Buddha is dead, he should be the one most wanting revenge. I told Zhu Yeqing that something had happened to Buddha, and I told her over the phone. Now I don't know how many people in the entire Hangzhou city are watching me, and for her safety, I can't go see her. After all, Li Xiaohua hasn't returned yet, and if Zhu Yeqing's location is exposed, it will be very dangerous. On the phone, Zhu Yeqing heard that Buddha Master was dead and was silent for 5 whole minutes before telling me that she knew. Zhu Yeqing said for me not to be impulsive, that Buddha Master's death was not that simple, and that the person who had struck Buddha Master was not someone I could contend with right now. Zhu Yeqing told me to wait until Li Xiaohua returned and her injuries had healed. I didn't say much, after all, Zhu Yeqing's injuries had not yet healed, but I felt stifled inside. Buddha Master just died so inexplicably, and I don't even have the ability to avenge him, which makes me feel like a waste. Zhao Sihai is here? Just as I was staring blankly at Buddha Master's tombstone, Zhao Yuejin gently tugged my sleeve. I turned my head and looked outside, and saw Zhao Sihai leaning on a cane, followed by 4 bodyguards, walking over here. Outside the cemetery, Zhao Sihai waved his hand gently, and the bodyguards stopped following him. He walked alone to the Buddha's tombstone, bent down, bowed 3 times. He was a hero on the streets back then. I never thought he would die like this. What a pity. After the ritual, Zhao Sihai walked up to me and said with some emotion. I took out a cigarette and handed it to him. Zhao Sihai took it, lit it, and took a drag. Sorry, I've been busy with Buddha's funeral these past 2 days, so I couldn't keep our appointment, I said to Zhao Sihai. Zhao Sihai waved his hand and said, I know, no need to explain. You're here today? I looked at Zhao Sihai, a little puzzled. Although Buddha was quite famous in Xiaxia, Zhao Sihai was a big shot who was counted in the whole city of Hangzhou. Although Buddha is always hanging out on the streets, Zhao Sihai is an entrepreneur, so the two are not on the same level and are not in the same business. For Zhao Sihai, Buddha does not need to be taken seriously, and he specifically came to Buddha's grave. What is he doing here today? Nothing, just to see if you are done with your work, and if you are, let's have a drink. Zhao Sihai looked at me and a smile appeared on his face. I glanced at Zhao Sihai and felt a little strange. Although I now have my own territory, compared to him, Zhao Sihai, I am just an insignificant little person. I don't understand why he is acting so close to me. Last time he invited me, and today he even came to Buddha's grave to invite me himself. If Zhu Yeqing and Li Xiaohua hadn't said that he wasn't the one who attacked you, Zhu Yeqing, I would have suspected his motives. Well, now that I've seen the Buddha, I'm in the mood for a drink. Since Boss Xiao is treating, let's get drunk tonight, I said with a smile. Good, let's go. Zhao Sihai said, turning directly and walking outside. I told Zhao Yuejin and Meng Chong to go back first, and went to the meeting alone with Yi Yuanba. Getting into Zhao Sihai's car, we went straight to his restaurant, a 5-star hotel under Zhao Sihai's name. When we arrived at the private dining room, Zhao Sihai had already arranged the food and wine. After we sat down, Zhao Sihai poured the wine and smiled as he toasted me. After setting down the glass, I looked at Zhao Sihai and asked directly, Boss Xiao, you are a big shot, and you have invited me, a small fry, repeatedly. What is it that you want? Just spit it out. Who is Zhao Sihai? He is the only person in Hangzhou over the years who dares to challenge Zhu Yeqing. He is not one of those thugs who fight and kill on the streets, but a real powerful person in Hangzhou. People don't treat you well for no reason, unless they have an ulterior motive. Chang'an brother is really quick-witted, but you guessed wrong this time. I called you here, and I really don't have any other ulterior motives, I just want to get close to you. Zhao Sihai laughed heartily, stroked his hair and said, Boss Xiao, I'm just a small person like me, I don't think I'm worth your attention, do I? I said with a bitter smile. No, you're not a small person. Zhao Sihai shook his head. Right now, you may not be well respected in Hangzhou, but I can guarantee that in no time, you will have a place in our circle. Oh, why do you say that, Boss Xiao? I asked Zhao Sihai with a smile. The reason is simple. You are Zhu Yeqing's savior. That woman is clear-cut in her judgments. She will definitely repay this life-saving debt, and the benefits she gives will definitely not be small. Mr. Zhao is joking. Even if I can impress Mr. Zhu, it's not worth you taking me so seriously. I said. I'm telling the truth. Even if I save Zhu Yeqing, what can I get from Zhu Yeqing? But to be honest, I'm also one of Zhu Yeqing's people. Zhao Sihai is on an equal footing with Zhu Yeqing, and he doesn't need to be so special to me. If it's just Zhu Yeqing, that's certainly not enough. There's one more thing, Chang Bo also values you very highly. Zhao Sihai looked at me and said with a smile. Chapter 93 A different Zhao Sihai. Chang Bo? I looked at Zhao Sihai with some confusion. Yes, it's been many years, and I've never seen Chang Bo admire someone so much. Zhao Sihai said with some emotion. I frowned, a little surprised. Chang Bo and I had only met twice, and I really didn't know what it was about me that he liked. Why would the real boss of Hangzhou value me so highly? What was it about me that he valued so much? I frowned, took a drag on my cigarette, and couldn't figure it out. Zhao Sihai came over and patted me on the shoulder, saying, Brother, with Zhu Yeqing and Chang Bo valuing you, you'll go far in Hangzhou in the future. I looked up at Zhao Sihai and felt a little puzzled. Even if I was valued by Zhu Yeqing and Chang Bo, in the end, I was just a nobody in Zhao Sihai's eyes. It didn't seem like he deserved to treat me this way. Moreover, according to rumors, Zhao Sihai was extremely arrogant and then arrogant. Over the years, he was the only person in Hangzhou who dared to go head-to-head with Zhu Yeqing. Although he almost always lost, at least it showed that he was not afraid of Zhu Yeqing. But now, what he is showing seems very different from the rumors. Zhao Sihai walked to the window and looked at the night scene outside, chuckling twice. Don't feel anything strange. To outsiders, I, Zhao Sihai, may seem like a reckless person, but I am much smarter than those smart Alecs. Zhao Sihai finished speaking and looked back at me. I can tell that you are also a smart person, which is why we are having this dinner today. I looked at Zhao Sihai and lightly frowned, re-examining the man in front of me. In everyone's eyes, Zhao Sihai is a hot-tempered and moody person, and even I used to think so. But we have all overlooked one thing, and that is how Zhao Sihai has managed to get to where he is today. I remembered what I had read about Zhao Sihai's past, and suddenly I realized that this man in front of me is no ordinary person. When Zhao Sihai was young, he was a top student at university with no background, not a second-generation rich man, and certainly not a second-generation official. But it was such a person with almost nothing who, in just 10 years, became the top rich man in Hangzhou. If he really is as unassuming as he seems, how could he have gotten to where he is today? Now in the whole of Hangzhou, apart from Chang Bo, the most powerful person is Zhu Yeqing. Anyone who sins against Zhu Yeqing will have a miserable end, and I don't know how many have been thrown into the Qiantang River. Zhao Sihai has had many open conflicts with Zhu Yeqing, and has even said things like he wants to get Zhu Yeqing into bed. But to this day, he is still alive and well, and he is still in control of the huge Sihai group. I narrowed my eyes and stared at Zhao Sihai. Over the past 10 years, Hangzhou has been in turmoil, and I don't know how many people have disappeared without a trace. But Zhao Sihai has been steadily moving upwards, which says it all. President Zhao is truly a master, able to deceive everyone. I said to Zhao Sihai. Only now did my tone carry a hint of respect, which came from the bottom of my heart. Zhao Sihai is a supremely intelligent person, and such a person cannot be taken lightly. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Sihai laughed loudly, sat back down, poured himself a glass of wine, then raised it up and signaled to me, gulping it down in one go. I followed suit and drained the glass. This is the way the world is. Many people only like to accept what they see, and they are not on their guard against people who are stupid in comparison. People who mingle in the world know how to act stupid, and they can only live long if they can do so. Zhao Sihai said with a smile. I looked at the empty glass in my hand and nodded. I already had a lot of respect for this man Zhao Sihai. He was telling the truth, and he meant it. This man has been doing this for so many years. In everyone's eyes, he, Zhao Sihai, is a hot-tempered man with no brains. But anyone who really treats him like a fool will end up in a terrible situation. Why is Mr. Zhao interested in telling me so much today? I looked at Zhao Sihai and asked him with a smile. What Zhao Sihai said to me today was absolutely not normal. He is a smart person, and the smarter the person, the less likely they are to easily open their heart to others. What's more, there is basically no friendship between him and me at all. At most, we have only met a few times. Zhao Sihai has no reason to, and there is no need for him to, tell me these heart-to-heart words. But he still said it, and I was curious about his reason. Brother Chong'an, what kind of person do you think I am? Zhao Sihai asked me with a smile. A smart person. I don't know anything else, after all, you and I don't have much of a friendship. I said. Ha, good, Brother Chong'an is indeed quick-witted, I like this personality. Zhao Sihai laughed heartily. He picked up the bottle and filled it for me, then poured himself a glass. Since you are so outspoken, I won't hide anything from you. I asked you here today because I want to be friends with you, and I hope you will look after me in the future if anything happens. Zhao Sihai raised his glass and drained it in one go. I raised my glass but didn't drink, looking at Zhao Sihai and saying to him with a wry smile, Mr. Zhao, if you say so, I really don't dare drink this glass of wine. Why don't you dare drink it? Drink! Zhao Sihai waved his hand imperiously at me. Mr. Zhao, please don't flatter me like that. You are someone, I am someone, there is no need for me to look after you, I said to him. Drink first, and then we can chat. Zhao Sihai raised his hand again, telling me to drink the wine in the cup. I could only lift the glass and drink it in one gulp. Good boy. Seeing that I had drunk the wine, Zhao Sihai gave me a thumbs up. I put down the glass and asked Zhao Sihai, Mr. Zhao, can you tell me now? Zhao Sihai did not answer my question, but instead took out a cigarette and lit it, frowning deeply. To be honest, my dear friend, I have been feeling uneasy lately. I fear that something is about to happen in Hangzhou, Zhao Sihai said calmly. Oh, I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Zhao. I looked at him and asked. That's what I mean. I feel that Hangzhou has been a bit restless lately, and it's a bit like 3 years ago. It scares me a bit, Zhao Sihai sighed. I frowned a little. I could tell that Zhao Sihai wasn't lying, he was telling the truth. But what kind of person like him would be afraid of? Anything? What happened in Hangzhou 3 years ago? I lowered my head and thought about it for a moment, and then my heart involuntarily skipped a beat. 3 years ago, there were really a lot of big things that happened in Hangzhou. Because Zhu Yeqing's husband Don Liang died 3 years ago. Chapter 94, Zhao Sihai's Worries. Don Liang was just a thug on Xiaxia Road back then, but in just a few years, he had turned himself into a big shot in Hangzhou. Back then, no one in Hangzhou would dare to mess with Don Liang, and he had married Zhu Yeqing. 3 years ago was Don Liang's most glorious moment, but it was also during his most glorious moment that he suddenly died suddenly. He died on his wedding night in his bridal chamber, and the cause of death was a mystery. Since then, Zhu Yeqing has become known among the people of Hangzhou as a vengeful widow. It was after Don Liang's death that Hangzhou fell into chaos. Of course, this chaos only came to the bigwigs of Hangzhou and had nothing to do with ordinary people. Because Don Liang's assets were so large, his sudden death left behind assets like a cake with no owner, making everyone jealous. Of course, there was also Zhu Yeqing, who had become a widow. Back then, there were countless people in Hangzhou who wanted a piece of the pie and to get their hands on the beautiful Zhu Yeqing. But none of them got what they wanted, because Zhu Yeqing stood up for herself. What followed was a terrifying purge. One by one, all those people who coveted Don Liang's assets disappeared without a trace. It can be said that the upper echelons of Hangzhou at that time were completely reshuffled, and Zhu Yeqing was the one who dealt the cards. I glanced at Zhao Sihai. Back then, he had also had designs on Zhu Yeqing, and had drunkenly said things like he wanted to get Zhu Yeqing into bed with him. Of course, the result was that he was beaten up by Li Xiaohua and thrown out into the street. Since then, Zhao Sihai has been fighting Zhu Yeqing with both overt and covert means for several years. That woman, Zhu Yeqing, is terrifying when she goes crazy. After she recovers from her injuries, I'm afraid there's going to be chaos in Hangzhou for a while. Zhao Sihai said with some helplessness. I looked at Zhao Sihai and felt a little strange. Zhu Yeqing and Li Xiaohua both knew that he had not arranged Zhu Yeqing's assassination, so naturally they would not seek revenge from him. So what was he worried about? Let me tell you a secret. In the eyes of outsiders over the years, although I have been at odds with Zhu Yeqing, we have had an agreement between us, and that is that we will never kill each other. Over the years, we have always kept this agreement. Zhao Sihai looked at me and said indifferently. What? You two had an agreement? Zhao Sihai's words really shocked me. Everyone in Hangzhou knows that Zhao Sihai and Zhu Yeqing are sworn enemies, the kind of people who hate each other enough to want to see each other dead. Now Zhao Sihai is actually telling me that he and Zhu Yeqing had an agreement, which makes me feel a little unbelievable. Who do you think has the most power in Hangzhou right now? Zhao Sihai asked with a smile. Chang Bo, and then you and Zhu Yeqing. I said. Of course, Chang Bo is the most powerful person in Hangzhou, in terms of both wealth and influence. No one in the entire city dares to compare with him. And among the big shots in Hangzhou, which one didn't receive funding from Chang Bo when they first started? Even Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai received help from Chang Bo when they first started. So Chang Bo is the most powerful person in Hangzhou. Apart from Chang Bo, it's Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai, and this is recognized by the entire city. Yes, apart from Chang Bo, it's just me and that woman Zhu Yeqing. Think about it, if we two don't fight, then what's the point of watching this Hangzhou? Zhao Sihai winked at me while he was talking. I didn't say anything, just bowed my head and pondered the meaning of Zhao Sihai's words. He and Zhu Yeqing are the two strongest people in Hangzhou apart from Chang Bo. Over the years, the two of them have fought openly and secretly, and the whole of Hangzhou has become accustomed to it. But now Zhao Sihai said that he and Zhu Yeqing had an agreement that neither would kill the other. Why is that? A very simple truth, the snail and the clam fight, and the fisherman benefits. We don't want the fisherman to take advantage of the situation. Zhao Sihai said indifferently. I looked at Zhao Sihai, the man with a fiery temper according to legend. At the moment, he was calm and collected, with a shrewd light flashing in his eyes. The world is actually very complicated, and people are also very complicated. Zhu Yeqing and I have come this far, and I don't know how many pairs of eyes are staring at us every day. Moreover, there are many entanglements of interests between us, and many people have placed bets between her and me. Although I have never been willing to fight with her, I have to. Some people just want me to fight with her. Zhao Sihai's face showed a hint of fatigue. He picked up his wineglass, took a sip, and let out a long sigh. I also took a sip from my glass. The news I heard today has shaken me to the core. Who would have thought that Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai, who are mutually irreconcilable and hate each other's guts, would have actually made a secret pact behind everyone's back. At this moment, I suddenly feel that the world is a bit ridiculous. No wonder when Zhu Yeqing had an accident, both Li Xiaohua and Zhu Yeqing were convinced that it wasn't Zhao Sihai who did it. When you're in the world, you can't help it. Everyone wears a mask out there. It's so damn tiring. Zhao Sihai let out a breath. I looked at Zhao Sihai and now understood what he had meant just now. He and Zhu Yeqing both had a lot of resources at their disposal, and of course their interests were intertwined with many people's. Among these people, some relied on Zhao Sihai for a living, while others relied on Zhu Yeqing. To put it bluntly, it is not that Zhao Sihai and Zhu Yeqing have any hatred for each other, but these people have doomed them to be unable to get along. So for the sake of various mutual interests, Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai have had to compete with each other over the years. It is not that they want to compete, but those people are forcing them to compete. I frowned and suddenly thought of a saying, when one is in the world, one cannot help oneself. Now it seems that this saying is really not wrong when applied to Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai. Zhu Yeqing and I have been playing a game of peace for a few years, but now someone is trying to kill her, and that makes me very worried. Zhao Sihai said with a frown. What are you worried about? I asked him. For so many years, the reason we have been able to maintain this balance is so that no one will cause trouble and everyone can make money. But now, someone seems to want to upset this balance. How can I not be worried? Zhao Sihai looked at me and raised an eyebrow. What is the purpose of that person doing this? I asked Zhao Sihai. The purpose is very simple. He is the one you want to make Hangzhou chaotic and reshuffle Hangzhou, so as to get more benefits. Zhao Sihai paused for a moment after saying this, and then said lightly, that person dares to move Zhu Yeqing, which proves that he has a very strong hand. I am a little worried that maybe Hangzhou will really change. Chapter 95 The Man Behind the Scenes. Today I got to know Zhao Sihai all over again. He is not the hot-tempered and impulsive fool that others see him as, but a man of great talent. No wonder he has been able to rise step by step to his current position in this ever-changing Hangzhou. This man is extraordinary. I don't think he was lying when he said those things to me today. It's a simple truth. He doesn't need to lie to me, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. I can just give Zhu Yeqing a call to find out. He, Zhao Sihai, is not that stupid. Did he see something or find out something when he told me all this? Thinking about this, I looked up at Zhao Sihai and asked him, do you know who did this to Zhu Yeqing? Zhao Sihai frowned, took a drag of his cigarette, and then said, I have some guesses, but I haven't confirmed them yet, so I can't say anything yet. I nodded and didn't ask any further. Since Zhao Sihai didn't want to say, it would be useless for me to ask. But I was curious. What had he guessed? Zhao Sihai was standing taller than me, so of course he had seen more things than me. It was normal for people in different positions to receive different information. I didn't call you here today for anything else, just to get to know you better. Let's not have any conflicts in the future, and I have high hopes for you. There will be a place for you in Hangzhou. Zhao Sihai let out a sigh and continued, I feel that things are about to change in Hangzhou. If anything does happen, we can look out for each other. Yi Qing is a woman after all, and it's not pleasant dealing with her. What do you think? After Zhao Sihai finished speaking, he looked up at me. Since Zhao Sihai had such a high opinion of me, I of course didn't want to refuse. I raised my glass and signaled to Zhao Sihai, and gulped down the wine in my glass. Ha ha, I was right about you, Chang'an brother. You are a smart man. After Zhao Sihai finished speaking, he laughed heartily and also finished the wine in one gulp. Zhao Sihai is highly placed and a person of great wisdom. I knew that he must have sensed something, which is why he approached me. Today's banquet is more like an alliance. I certainly will not refuse Zhao Sihai's goodwill. Now I have just entered the stormy world of Hangzhou. Although I have Zhu Yeqing, my own foundation is still too shallow. Befriending Zhao Sihai is a great help to me. Since we have already said everything, there is no longer any misunderstanding between us, and we parted with a good time. After going back, I still went to Mu Xiaowan's place. After all, living with Yi Yuanba is really a bit awkward for two grown men. And deep down, it seems that I prefer going to Mu Xiaowan's place. There was nothing I could do about it. After all, Mu Xiaowan was young and pretty, and no man could resist a girl like that. The most important thing was that I wanted Mu Xiaowan to help me decide what to do about Zhao Sihai. I used to think that Mu Xiaowan was just an ordinary girl with a bit of a free spirit, but in the past few days, she had become completely different in my eyes. Since the accident, Mu Xiaowan and I had discussed the situation every night. This girl has helped me a lot. There are many things that she sees more clearly than I do. This has made me increasingly suspicious of Mu Xiaowan's background. A girl with such insight definitely comes from an extraordinary family. I stood in front of Mu Xiaowan's door and knocked twice. Mu Xiaowan, wearing a nightgown, opened the door and stood in front of me. When she saw me, Mu Xiaowan pinched her nose and raised her hand to fan the wind. Chang'an, what are you doing? You smell like alcohol. Go back to your own room. Although she looked disgusted, Mu Xiaowan did not close the door. I smiled at her and walked in without any hesitation. Hey, Chang'an, what are you doing? Did I let you in? I'll call the police for breaking into a girl's room. Mu Xiaowan said this while closing the door. I ignored Mu Xiaowan's complaints and went to the refrigerator, took out a bottle of chilled Coke, and gulped it down a few times. I felt so comfortable. Good for you, Chang'an. It seems I'll have to keep my distance from you from now on. Now that you've come to my house, you've got no sense of boundaries at all, said Mu Xiaowan, frowning and cross-arming. I smiled at her, knowing that she wasn't really angry. She is a smart girl, knowing that today is the day the Buddha is buried, and I went to see the Buddha off. She was afraid that I would feel uncomfortable, so she deliberately teased me. Quickly say, what kind of wine is it with? Is it a bad woman from outside? Mu Xiaowan asked, pointing at me. I walked over to the sofa and sat down. I have something I want to talk to you about, I said to Mu Xiaowan. Seeing my serious expression, Mu Xiaowan sat on the other side of the sofa and asked me, did something happen today? I nodded and then told her, it's Zhao Sihai. He told me a lot today. Oh, Zhao Sihai. What did he tell you? Mu Xiaowan's face showed a hint of curiosity. I didn't have the slightest bit of caution towards Mu Xiaowan, because this girl didn't need me to guard against anything, so I told Mu Xiaowan again what Zhao Sihai had told me after our meeting today. Zhao Sihai is really a smart man. After listening to me, Mu Xiaowan nodded with an expression of appreciation on her face. Do you think he knows something? I asked Mu Xiaowan. Of course, Zhao Sihai is a person at the top of Hangzhou City. He has experienced countless intrigues and is very sensitive. He will be the first to detect any changes, Mu Xiaowan said without hesitation. So what do you think he's afraid of? I asked Mu Xiaowan again. A person like Zhao Sihai is already at the top, so in theory, even if there is a change in Hangzhou, he doesn't need to be so afraid. After all, it is very difficult to bring down someone who is in their position. Don't you think that there seems to be an invisible hand pushing things in Hangzhou right now? Mu Xiaowan looked at me and frowned as she asked. I pondered for a moment, from the incident with Zhu Yeqing, to the death of Buddha, to Zhao Sihai's attitude today. Even if I were a fool, I could feel that there seems to be an undercurrent in Hangzhou right now, and someone wants Hangzhou to be in chaos. I just don't know who that person is. Just then, my heart suddenly skipped a beat. In the entire city of Hangzhou, who could move Zhu Yeqing, who could get rid of Buddha Master without leaving a trace, and who could make Zhao Sihai afraid? Chang Bo. Only Chang Bo in the entire city of Hangzhou could really make Zhao Sihai afraid. Thinking about this, I suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, and the smell of alcohol on my body disappeared. Could it be that Chang Bo was behind all this, and what was his purpose in doing so? Chapter 96, They Are All Afraid. What are you thinking? Just then, Mu Xiaowan looked at me and asked. I thought of someone, and it seemed that only he could do these things in Hangzhou. I said to Mu Xiaowan, but my voice was obviously hoarse. You mean Chang Bo? Mu Xiaowan asked me. I took a deep breath and nodded to her. Mu Xiaowan frowned and didn't say anything, as if she was thinking about something. Chang Bo is a legend, even a legend, to the people of Hangzhou. Back when he had nothing, he took advantage of the reforming spring breeze and made his way to the top with his bare hands. He has always been the richest man in Hangzhou, and no matter how the tides change in Hangzhou, he will always be sitting in the number one position. This old man is low-key and generous. Every year, he does a lot of good deeds and donates money and goods. What's more, he likes to support young people. Over the past few decades, when the big bosses of Hangzhou were just starting out, they all received help and financial support from this old man. There is no doubt that in everyone's eyes, Chang Bo is a good person. I can hardly imagine that Chang Bo would do these things. It seems that only he in Hangzhou would dare to do this and has the ability to do so. At this time, Mu Xiaowan spoke up. But what's the reason? He has no reason to do this, right? I asked Mu Xiaowan. Whether it was Zhu Yeqing or Zhao Sihai, they were both able to gain a foothold in Hangzhou with the help of Chang Bo. They were basically supported by Chang Bo, and there didn't seem to be any conflict of interest between them and Chang Bo. There was simply no reason for Chang Bo to do anything to them. After eliminating all the unlikely possibilities, the result is often the one you least expect. Mu Xiaowan spoke again at this time. No, it can't be Chang Bo. I shook my head in disbelief. This is just a guess, after all, there is no evidence for anything. No one can say for sure if it was him or not. I hope we're both wrong. Mu Xiaowan said. I looked at Mu Xiaowan. Her beautiful face made me feel a little dazed and unfamiliar at this time. I finally couldn't resist my curiosity and asked her, "It seems like you come from a very complicated background." This is what I really think. An ordinary girl definitely wouldn't be able to talk to me every day about the goings-on in Hangzhou, and analyze the various forces and interests in Hangzhou in a well-reasoned way. Aren't girls her age most interested in talking about food and travel every day? But Mu Xiaowan has a clear mind and a unique perspective, which makes me feel that she is definitely not simple. What? What are you talking about, Chong'an? Mu Xiaowan asked me with a blink of her eyes. I said I feel that you seem very extraordinary. I repeated my question very seriously. Chong'an, you're drunk. What nonsense are you talking about? Mu Xiaowan held out her hand and waved it in front of my eyes. Stop messing around, come on, who exactly are you? I stared at Mu Xiaowan and asked her again. Mu Xiaowan looked at me as I stared at her, her eyes twinkling mischievously as she smiled and said, Chong'an, what are you thinking? I'll tell you then, my background is not simple, I am a princess from the previous dynasty, so you should kneel down immediately. Mu Xiaowan giggled and sat up straight. I looked at Mu Xiaowan and sighed helplessly. This girl really makes me feel powerless a lot of the time. If you don't want to say, that's fine, I said. What do you mean? Chong'an, do you think I'm lying to you? Tell me the truth, I'm just an ordinary girl from an ordinary family, don't get any ideas. Mu Xiaowan said, snorting, humph, do you think if I really were some noble lady I would even look at a bumpkin like you? I just feel that you understand some things better than I do. I said. What's the big deal? I'm a brilliant person, I've read countless detective and gangster novels, this is nothing to me. Mu Xiaowan said to me with a proud face. I looked at Mu Xiaowan again. Although I still felt that something was wrong, I didn't know what to say for the time being. It's fine, don't think about me, what you need to figure out now is who wants to cause chaos in Hangzhou. Mu Xiaowan said to me with a serious face. I don't know. I shook my head. A very simple truth is that no matter what a person does, all motivation comes from the benefits that can be gained from it. If there is no benefit, no one will do it. Moreover, dealing with Zhu Yeqing is a very risky business, and only enough benefit can make someone do it. Tell me, if Zhu Yeqing collapses, who will gain the most? Who would benefit the most from getting rid of Zhu Yeqing? I repeated Mu Xiaowan's words and lowered my head to think. From the perspective of outsiders, Zhao Sihai and Zhu Yeqing have been fighting for many years, so it is natural to think that the person who would benefit the most from getting rid of Zhu Yeqing is Zhao Sihai. However, Zhao Sihai and Zhu Yeqing had an agreement long ago that neither of them would kill the other. Because they are both smart people, if the two of them really fight to the death, they will both suffer heavy losses, and the losses will outweigh the gains. Is there another reason for this agreement between them? Are they thinking of something? Mu Xiaowan asked me. I nodded. Mu Xiaowan said, in fact, both Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai are top-level smart people. The agreement between them is not as simple as it seems. The reason they will not kill each other is because they are also afraid. What are they afraid of? I asked Mu Xiaowan. Think about it. Whether Zhu Yeqing defeats Zhao Sihai or Zhao Sihai defeats Zhu Yeqing, they will naturally swallow up each other's assets and territories, which will make their power even greater. In that case, who will be more of a threat? Mu Xiaowan winked at me. Chang Bo. I blurted out. That's him. Mu Xiaowan nodded. The reason why they have not been able to defeat each other over the years is that they have deliberately maintained this balance, because they are afraid that if they really get rid of each other, they will arouse Chang Bo's jealousy and even threaten Chang Bo. I see. No wonder Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai would have that agreement, no wonder they have been fighting for so many years without allowing each other to be seriously injured. It turns out that they have always been afraid, and what they are afraid of is Chang Bo. Chapter 97, Do Me a Favor. I looked at Mu Xiaowan, a little unable to believe that this was the answer I got. Of course, right now the two of us are just speculating here, and it's not definite. Mu Xiaowan smiled and patted my shoulder. I nodded without saying anything, my mind constantly pondering the possibility that the person behind the scenes was Chang Bo. But after thinking about it, I still don't think it's possible. If Chang Bo was worried that Zhu Yeqing or Zhao Sihai would threaten him, then he could have just not helped them in the first place. Since he helped them gain a foothold in Hangzhou, and now he wants to get rid of them, isn't that like taking off your pants to fart, a needless step? Someone like Chang Bo can't be that boring, can he? But if he isn't Chang Bo, then who is he? Come on, don't think about it anymore. Right now you're just a small character, and Zhu Yeqing and Zhao Sihai are in a higher position than you, seeing more than you do. Let these troublesome things be considered by them. Mu Xiaowan said to me. She was right. It seemed that I was not yet qualified to consider such things. No matter who was dealing with Zhu Yeqing or what was worrying Zhao Sihai, it was simply not something I could solve. But for some reason, I had a feeling that I had already been involuntarily drawn into it. At this time, Mu Xiaowan looked at me, hesitated for a moment, and then said to me, "Hey, Chong'an, don't think about these useless things. I have a favor to ask you tomorrow. Are you in or out? What do you want me to do?" I looked at Mu Xiaowan strangely, as this was the first time she had asked me for help. Mu Xiaowan bit her lip, her face showing a hint of shyness. "Don't ask, just say yes or no." Mu Xiaowan bit her lip, her face showing a hint of shyness. "As long as you don't ask me to sell my body, I'll do anything else," I said with a smile. You're not even good enough to be a gigolo." Mu Xiaowan gave me a glare. I felt my pride being hurt, so I quickly asked Mu Xiaowan, "What exactly do you want me to do for you?" "Just tell me." "Well, can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a day tomorrow?" Mu Xiaowan hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. "What? Pretend to be your boyfriend?" I didn't expect Mu Xiaowan to make such a request, and I was stunned for a moment. "What's wrong, Chang'an? Are you unwilling? It's your honor to pretend to be my boyfriend." Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Mu Xiaowan suddenly became a bit anxious. No, I'm not reluctant, it's just that why do you suddenly want to do this?" I looked at Mu Xiaowan and suddenly thought of a possibility. "Oh, do you have to meet your ex-boyfriend tomorrow?" The first time I met Mu Xiaowan, she was drunk in a bar after breaking up with her ex-boyfriend. Now suddenly she wants me to pretend to be her boyfriend. Does she want me to slap her ex-boyfriend in the face for her? Mu Xiaowan usually likes to read online novels when she's free, so has she been influenced by those pretentious slapstick scenes? Don't be ridiculous, what ex-boyfriend? It's my dad and my brother who are meeting me tomorrow. Mu Xiaowan gave me a glare and said. What, your dad and your brother? Hearing Mu Xiaowan's words, my jaw almost dropped to the ground. If it's just pretending to be her boyfriend to slap her boyfriend in the face, of course I won't hesitate. After all, everyone likes the pretentious slapstick routine. But if it's a meeting with the parents, it's a different matter. After all, it's a meeting with Mu Xiaowan's elders, and I'm just an imposter. If I'm found out later, I'll be in trouble. What, you don't want to go? Mu Xiaowan looked at me. To meet your parents, isn't this a bit too sudden, and it's not appropriate for me to be an imposter? I said to Mu Xiaowan. Men really can't be trusted. Who was it that just now vowed that they would agree to anything as long as they didn't have to be a gigolo? Mu Xiaowan snorted, looking at me with a hint of disdain. Big sister, it's different. After all, this is cheating on your family. If I get found out, how embarrassing would that be? I explained to Mu Xiaowan. Shameless, who are you calling big sister? Besides, you're single now, and so am I. How come I can't say you're my boyfriend? Mu Xiaowan said angrily. I looked at Mu Xiaowan and suddenly froze. What did she mean? Could it be that she was serious and really wanted me to be her boyfriend? To be fair to Mu Xiaowan, I was divorced and single, and so was she. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with us dating. What's more, Mu Xiaowan is young and pretty, and there seems to be no reason for me to refuse. Thinking about this, I looked Mu Xiaowan over again from top to bottom. The more I looked, the more I thought she was really pretty, and it would be really good to have her as my girlfriend. Chang'an, what are you thinking? Seeing my gaze, Mu Xiaowan seemed to guess what I was thinking, and looked at me with slight anger. No. I wasn't thinking anything. Hearing Mu Xiaowan's words, I came back to my senses and hurriedly explained. I was just thinking too much. Mu Xiaowan is young and pretty, and she is also a flight attendant. I am a few years older than her, and I am also married. How could she possibly like me? Humph, you old lecher, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I'll ask you again, are you going tomorrow? Mu Xiaowan gave me an ultimatum. Although I really didn't want to go, looking at Mu Xiaowan's attitude, I thought if I really refused, she would probably turn her back on me. Besides, Mu Xiaowan has helped me a lot over this period of time, and I don't seem to have any reason to refuse. Okay, I promise, but I have a question. How long are your father and brother going to stay in Hangzhou? I asked Mu Xiaowan. If Mu Xiaowan's father and brother are going to stay in Hangzhou for a long time, then I'm going to have to pretend to be her boyfriend every day. Don't worry, they'll only be staying for a day tomorrow, Mu Xiaowan said. I let out a sigh of relief. Just one day, that's okay. Okay, then I'll go with you to the airport tomorrow to greet your father-in-law and brother-in-law. I said to Mu Xiaowan with a smile. Damn you, Chen Chong'an, what did you say? Mu Xiaowan was so angry that she turned red, and she picked up a pillow and threw it at me. Hey, don't be angry, I'm just trying to get into the mood, so that I don't blow my cover when I meet them tomorrow. By the way, what time is their flight? I asked Mu Xiaowan. Humph, there's no need to pick them up. They've already arrived in Hangzhou today, and we're just having dinner together tomorrow. Mu Xiaowan said. Ah, they're already in Hangzhou, well, tomorrow I'll treat you to a big meal, and I'll arrange the place. I smiled, took out my phone, and called Zhao Sihai. His hotel is one of the best in Hangzhou, and tonight the two of us can be considered allies, so we should take advantage of this relationship. I asked Zhao Sihai to arrange a best private room for me, and I would go there tomorrow night. Don't worry, brother, everything is arranged. What kind of standard do you want to entertain people? Zhao Sihai asked again. I glanced at Mu Xiaowan and smiled and said, tomorrow I will entertain my father-in-law and eldest brother-in-law. I see, then I know what to do, I will arrange the highest standard for tomorrow. Zhao Sihai said immediately. Okay, then thank you, brother. I thanked Zhao Sihai a few times and hung up the phone. Mu Xiaowan had been staring at me with anger for a long time, her eyes looking as if she wanted to eat me. Cough cough, don't look at me like that. If I don't say it's my father-in-law, the standard won't be high enough. I'm just looking out for you, so you can save face in front of your father and brother. I said to Mu Xiaowan, a little embarrassed. I thought I was going to face Mu Xiaowan's fist again, but I didn't expect her to attack. She just gave me a blank look. Humph, I'll let you off this time, but if you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll fix you. Mu Xiaowan said this and waved her fist at me. Of course, I wasn't afraid at all. I just felt that Mu Xiaowan looked kind of indescribably cute right now. Knock, knock. At this moment, 2 light knocks came from the door. Hearing the knocking sound, I was startled and quickly stood up from the sofa, looking at Mu Xiaowan with some concern. Chapter 98, The Wild Li Xiaohua. Could it be that Mu Xiaowan's father has come? It's late at night, and Mu Xiaowan and I are in the same room. If her father sees us, the fake situation could become real, and it would be hard to explain in the future. Don't worry, I haven't told my father where I live. Mu Xiaowan said as she walked to the door. I let out a sigh of relief, looked towards the door, and wondered in my heart who could be looking for Mu Xiaowan at this late hour. Mu Xiaowan walked to the door, looked out through the peephole, and then turned to me and said, Your man, the bodyguard. Yi Yuanba? I walked to the door a little strangely, opened it, and sure enough, I saw Yi Yuanba standing there. Only now did Yi Yuanba look a little disheveled, with several tears in his clothes, as if they had been torn open by someone. And he was sweating profusely and breathing heavily. When I saw Yi Yuanba, I froze for a moment, and then my heart tightened. Yi Yuanba looked like he had been in a fight. I knew how skilled he was, and I wondered who could have made him look so disheveled. I sensed a hint of danger, so I walked out of the room and asked Yi Yuanba, who was it? Yi Yuanba shook his head and said he didn't know, but the opponent was a master, and he had fought with him for more than 100 moves before the opponent fell back and fled. I'm surprised that he was able to last more than 100 moves against you. I looked at Yi Yuanba with some surprise. I asked Zhao Yuejin about Yi Yuanba's skill level. Zhao Yuejin said that Li Xiaohua is very strong, and someone of Li Xiaohua's strength is considered to be at the top among the ancient martial artists. He estimated that Yi Yuanba's strength is only slightly weaker than Li Xiaohua's, and if the two really fought, Yi Yuanba would not be defeated within 100 moves. Being able to withstand 100 moves from a fierce person like Li Xiaohua is enough to prove Yi Yuanba's strength. And today, that person was actually able to withstand 100 moves from Yi Yuanba, and he is definitely a master as well. Are you here for me? I asked Yi Yuanba. Yi Yuanba shook his head and said, that person didn't seem to have any murderous intent, it seems that he just simply wanted to spar with me. Hearing Yi Yuanba's words, I was a little confused again. Who on earth is it that comes looking for Yi Yuanba to spar with him in the middle of the night? Anyway, it's better to be careful, so you'd better continue to live across the street. Yi Yuanba said, glanced at Mu Xiaowan's room, then turned and walked into my room, closing the door behind him. I shook my head helplessly and returned to Mu Xiaowan's room. It seems that tonight I will have to sleep on the sofa again. Southeast Asia, a small country, a luxurious cruise ship is docked on the wide river. At this time, the cruise ship is anchored on the water. The cruise ship is brightly lit, and on the deck, several beautiful women are wearing skimpy bikinis and dancing seductively. All around the ship, there is a bodyguard with an assault rifle standing guard at a distance of 4 or 5 meters. At the back of the deck, a man, with a beautiful woman in his arms, is enjoying the dance in front of him while drinking wine. Whoosh! A sudden sound of water broke the silence on the calm surface. With the sound of water, behind the stern of the ship, ripples were created on the otherwise calm surface, as if caused by a fish jumping out of the water. The water below the stern of the ship was broken open, revealing the head of a person. The person placed their hands on the hull of the ship and, like a gecko, actually climbed up the smooth hull. No one could believe that someone would climb like a gecko. So naturally no one noticed the abnormality here. The man climbing upward was bald, and in the moonlight it could be clearly seen that there was a blooming purple peony tattooed on his bald head. This person climbing out of the water was Li Xiaohua, who had already arrived in Southeast Asia. Today he was looking for Lingyu, the second in command of Tang, the one who was enjoying the wine and admiring the beautiful women on the bow deck. Li Xiaohua crawled silently like a gecko on the hull of the ship and soon reached the stern. He reached out and rested his hand on the railing of the deck, and with a light leap, he stood on the ship. It wasn't until then that a bodyguard with a gun noticed Li Xiaohua. But before he could turn around and make any move, Li Xiaohua had already rushed up to him. Li Xiaohua slashed the man's neck with a hand knife. With a crisp sound of bone breaking, the hand knife actually cut the man's neck directly. Without stopping, Li Xiaohua walked towards the bow of the ship. He moved quickly, and the bodyguards he encountered along the way were all knocked out before they could react. At this time, Li Xiaohua was like he was in his own world on the cruise ship, strolling around as if he was at home. After eliminating the last bodyguard, Li Xiaohua finally stood on the deck. The woman who was dancing saw Li Xiaohua and screamed in fear, scattering in all directions. Lingyu held his wineglass, his mouth wide open, looking at Li Xiaohua walking towards him in disbelief. It wasn't that he didn't want to run, but he didn't dare to. Because he knew how perverted this bald guy in front of him was, and if he tried to escape, he would definitely die a miserable death. Brother Xiaohua, this tough guy hasn't been in action for a long time, it's about time he got some action. Chapter 99, An Absolute Tough Guy. Lingyu looked at Li Xiaohua, who was standing in front of him, with disbelief. His expression was like he had seen a ghost. He couldn't figure it out. His cruise ship was in the river, so how did this guy sneak up on him without making a sound? But then he thought, this guy in front of him was Li Xiaohua, so it didn't seem strange for anything to happen to him. As he looked at Li Xiaohua, cold sweat trickled down Lingyu's forehead. As the second in command of the Tang, he of course knew what kind of job his organization had recently taken on, and he also knew why Li Xiaohua had come here. Thinking about this, Lingyu felt even more fear in his heart, and the sweat on his head flowed even more. Li Xiaohua, I'll fight you to the death. Lingyu let out a strange cry, his body bounced up from the sofa, and he charged towards Li Xiaohua, looking as if he was going to fight to the death. However, after taking 2 steps, the guy slammed on the brakes, then turned around and ran towards the back. Although Lingyu is also a pretty good martial artist, he doesn't have the guts to fight to the death with a psychopath like Li Xiaohua. Besides, with his own skills, he is simply not qualified to fight to the death with this bald psychopath, it's a death sentence. Lingyu's heart is as clear as a mirror. As Lingyu turned around and fled, Li Xiaohua sneered and chased after him with a raised foot. At this moment, 3 figures appeared inside the cabin and blocked Li Xiaohua's way. They were 3 men in black suits. All 3 were burly, with taut muscles and bulging temples. It was obvious that they were experts. Block him for me. Block him. Ling Yu, who had rushed into the cabin, finally let out a sigh of relief when he saw his bodyguards appear. These 3 men were bodyguards he had hired at great expense. They were much stronger than he was, and with the 3 of them working together, Ling Yu felt that there was a possibility that he could keep Li Xiaohua from leaving today. No matter how perverted Li Xiaohua is, he can't win against 3 people. Hearing Ling Yu's words, the 3 bodyguards charged towards Li Xiaohua. 2 of them kicked Li Xiaohua in the chest. Li Xiaohua stood still, raised his arms, and blocked the 2 kicks, his body not moving an inch. At this moment, the 3rd person yelled and punched Li Xiaohua in the face. The punch was fierce, and it actually made a whistling sound. Li Xiaohua raised his hand to block the face, and the punch landed on the palm of his hand. The punch was so powerful that it made Li Xiaohua involuntarily take a step back. Seeing this, the other person crouched down and directly swept his leg, heading straight for Li Xiaohua's calf. This leg was like a bolt of thunder, and if an ordinary person were to be swept by it, I'm afraid both legs would be directly swept off. However, Li Xiaohua did not move an inch, only slightly furrowing his brow, shoulders sinking slightly, and a crack actually appeared in the deck beneath his feet. Boom! The man swept his foot to the calf of Li Xiaohua's leg, but surprisingly, Li Xiaohua did not move an inch, but the man's face turned pale, and after retracting his leg, he took a step back, his figure unsteady. It looked like he had actually suffered a great loss from this move. The other 2 men glanced at each other, their figures flashing as they pounced from left and right at Li Xiaohua. One punched straight at Li Xiaohua's left temple, while the other, from a tricky angle, threw a double punch straight at Li Xiaohua's right ribs. Facing the fierce onslaught of the 2 men, Li Xiaohua still did not move. Seeing that he was not moving, a look of joy flashed in the eyes of the 2 men, thinking that they were about to succeed. Just as lightning flashes in a thunderstorm, Li Xiaohua moved. His movement was direct and violent. He slapped out, aiming for the face of the person to his right. Li Xiaohua's slap came so fast that there was no time to dodge. With a muffled sound, the slap directly hit the man's face. The man didn't even have time to grunt before he fell headfirst onto the deck. Li Xiaohua didn't even look at him, and turned directly, sweeping out with one arm. The other person's heart pounded when he saw Li Xiaohua's arm, and he tried to dodge, but it was too late. Boom! The man protected his chest with his hands, trying to block Li Xiaohua's arm. Unfortunately, Li Xiaohua's strength was too great, far greater than he could imagine. The blow landed directly on his arm, and then on his chest. Under the heavy blow, the man's arm and sternum were broken, and he spurted out a mouthful of blood. He flew backwards, crashing heavily onto the deck and passing out directly. At this time, Li Xiaohua turned back and looked at the last remaining person. Even a fool could tell that he and the killing god before him were on completely different levels, and that going up there was just a death sentence. He let out a strange cry and turned around, trying to escape. Li Xiaohua moved, coming up behind him, and stomped directly on his shin. With a sound that made the teeth ache, the man's leg snapped, and he fell to the ground, clutching his leg and screaming in agony. Li Xiaohua frowned, and with the point of his toe to the man's temple, he passed out. Then Li Xiaohua looked up and saw Ling Yu standing at the cabin door. Ling Yu's face was pale, and he looked at Li Xiaohua, swallowing hard. 10 years ago, Ling Yu had fought Li Xiaohua before, and he had lost. He had always thought that the gap between him and Li Xiaohua was not that big. It wasn't until now, when he watched Li Xiaohua so easily destroy his 3 top fighters, that Ling Yu finally understood that the gap between himself and Li Xiaohua was much wider than he had imagined. What kind of a ghost is this guy? A deep sense of powerlessness and despair arose in Ling Yu's heart. Is there anyone else? Li Xiaohua looked at Ling Yu and asked lightly. These 3 people were Ling Yu's last resort, so where did he have any more tricks up his sleeve? He shook his head honestly. If that's the case, then come over and chat? Li Xiaohua said to him. Ling Yu knew that he could never win against this tough guy on his own, took a deep breath, and came to Li Xiaohua's side. Let me tell you, moving Zhu Yiqing was not my idea. Someone found the boss, and I tried to persuade him at the time, but the price the other party offered was too good, and the boss wouldn't listen to me. Ling Yu, who had walked up to Li Xiaohua, hurriedly explained. Well, I know about that, otherwise why do you think you're still standing right now? Li Xiaohua said indifferently. Hearing Li Xiaohua's words, Ling Yu couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, but immediately realized that something was wrong. You met the boss? Ling Yu asked somewhat disbelievingly. Well, I just met him during the day, but now he's a dead man. Li Xiaohua said indifferently. What? Hearing Li Xiaohua's words, Ling Yu jumped up like a cat with its tail stepped on, looking at Li Xiaohua with a face of horror.
Chapter 100 Mu Xiaowan's family. What did you say just now?
Ling Yu asked Li Xiaohua in disbelief. I said he is dead, Li Xiaohua said.
How did he die?
Ling Yu emphasized. He is more professional. I asked him who the client of this business was. He said that even if he killed him he would not say, so I let him go. Li Xiaohua said indifferently. Ling Yu knew best who the boss of Qisa Tang was. He was originally from Daxia and was also an ancient martial artist, much stronger than himself. 10 years ago, he discovered the Qisa Tang assassin organization here, when a single person almost defeated all the masters of Southeast Asia. He was an absolute ruthless and fierce person, otherwise a proud person like Ling Yu would not willingly be his second in command. I never thought that Li Xiaohua would actually kill him.
How did he do it? The boss's skills aside, Qisa Tang is Southeast Asia's #1 killer organization.
It has many powerful ancient martial artists in it, and even some small Southeast Asian countries don't want to mess with Qisa Tang. But now, the head of Qisa Tang has been killed, and he was killed by a single person.
If this gets out, I don't think anyone will believe it.
However, Ling Yu knew that someone like Li Xiaohua would not brag, and there was no need to brag to himself, so there was only one possibility: he was telling the truth.
How the hell did you do it?
Ling Yu looked at Li Xiaohua and involuntarily took a step back. Li Xiaohua now looked no different to him than the king of hell.
Find him and kill him, it's that simple.
Li Xiaohua said indifferently. Ling Yu let out a bitter laugh, and a deep sense of powerlessness arose in his heart. I always thought I looked down on Li Xiaohua, but now I realize that this guy in front of me is far more fierce than I imagined.
This is no ancient martial artist, this is a human nuclear bomb. Who can do such a thing as single-handedly breaking into the Seven-Colored Gang's base camp and killing its leader? Just tell me what you want me to do, as long as you don't kill me, I'll do whatever you want.
Ling Yu took a deep breath and forced down the fear in his heart.
He knew that with Li Xiaohua's strength, it would be easy to kill him, and the only reason he was still alive was because he was still useful to him. Ling Yu didn't want to die, so he didn't hesitate to bow his head. I want to know who the client is behind this business you took on. Li Xiaohua asked Ling Yu.
Ling Yu knew that Li Xiaohua was asking about the assassination of Zhu Yeqing.
The next moment, he shook his head and said, I don't know.
This was a job taken on by the boss. Only he knows who the employer is. Li Xiaohua looked at Ling Yu and knew that he wasn't lying.
He knew a little about Qisa Tang.
The boss was very powerful, and over the years, Qisa Tang had attached great importance to its reputation and had never revealed the identity of its clients. Although Ling Yu was nominally the second in command of Qisa Tang, the boss still made all the decisions.
Well, since you don't know, that's fine. Li Xiaohua nodded and looked at Ling Yu.
Under Li Xiaohua's gaze, the cold sweat on Ling Yu's head immediately flowed down again. He figured in his heart that he was no longer useful to him, and he might as well kill him to keep his mouth shut. At that moment, Ling Yu's muscles were tense and he was ready to fight to the death. However, he also knew in his heart that if he fought to the death with such a fierce person, he would be the one to die in the end. However, Li Xiaohua didn't seem to want to kill him, and just said lightly, since he's dead, you'll be the boss of Qisa Tang from now on. I hope you remember that there are some things and people you shouldn't touch, and it's best not to. Hearing Li Xiaohua's words, Ling Yu let out a sigh of relief and almost sat down on the ground. He knew that since Li Xiaohua had said such things, his life was safe. I know, I will definitely remember this in the future, and I will withdraw all the killers tomorrow.
Ling Yu hurriedly nodded in agreement.
Now that Li Xiaohua could spare his life, he was afraid that he would be willing to eat shit if he was told to. Li Xiaohua glanced at Ling Yu and said nothing more, just walking towards the deck. The next moment, Li Xiaohua leapt forward and jumped directly off the ship, splashing into the water. Ling Yu could no longer hold back, and collapsed directly onto the ground. Cold sweat kept running down his head, and his clothes on his back were soaked through. On the shore, Li Xiaohua walked up out of the water. In the moonlight, his face looked slightly pale. The next moment, the clothes on his chest had already been dyed red by the blood. Li Xiaohua coughed, and vomited a mouthful of blood. He had been injured, although not fatally, but very seriously. The injuries on his body were not from earlier on the boat, but from earlier in the day. A person who single-handedly broke into the headquarters of the Seven-Colored Hall and killed the boss of the Seven-Colored Hall, even a strong person like Li Xiaohua was seriously injured. However, Li Xiaohua was extraordinarily fierce, and he managed to suppress the injuries on his body and came to the boat again, shocking Ling Yu. Because he knew that Ling Yu would become the boss of the Seven-Colored Hall, and now only he could call back the assassins who had gone to Hangzhou, so Zhu Yeqing would be a bit safer. Li Xiaohua let out a sigh and walked towards the night ahead, looking for a place to heal his wounds. Early the next morning, I went to the bar first, which was still under renovation. With Zhao Yuejin and Meng Chong as supervisors, the progress was quick, and it would probably be able to reopen for business in a few days. Now all my income depends on this bar, so I'm very concerned about it. In the afternoon, Mu Xiaowan called and asked me to hurry back and pack, and follow her to meet her father and brother. I hurried home, changed into the suit that Zhu Yeqing had bought for me. "How is it, brother? This image doesn't lose points for you, does it?" I said to Mu Xiaowan with a smile. "Virtue, hurry up, I told my father the location of the hotel, we have to go and wait for them first, don't say anything stupid in a while." Mu Xiaowan said to me fiercely. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing, how could I not be in my right mind when I meet my father-in-law and brother-in-law?" I said with a smile. Mu Xiaowan angrily twisted my arm, and then we took a taxi and went straight to the hotel. We arrived at the private room reserved by Zhao Sihai and waited for about half an hour before the two men came in. The man was about 60 years old at the time, with slightly gray hair at the temples. The other was a middle-aged man in his early 30s. The two men walked in with an indescribable air about them, giving off a feeling that made people afraid to look directly at them. "Don't just stand there, get up. This is my father and my brother." Mu Xiaowan gently tugged me and I stood up. Chapter 100, Thank you all for your company, the best is yet to come. Chapter 101, Meeting the Parents. The two people who came in were Mu Xiaowan's father, Mu Lianqing, and her brother, Mu Feng. Hearing Mu Xiaowan's words, I quickly stood up and walked up to the two of them, smiling and extending my hand. "Hello, uncle, hello, brother." Mu Xiaowan's father calmly extended his hand and shook it with mine lightly. "Chong'an, right?" "Yes, uncle." I quickly nodded with a smile and agreed. He also nodded, then sat down in his seat. I walked over to Mu Xiaowan's brother and smiled, extending my hand to him. Unexpectedly, this cheap older brother just snorted coldly, not even looking at me, and turned his head to sit down. I withdrew my outstretched hand and smiled awkwardly. This guy actually doesn't look down on me, which really made me a little angry. If it weren't for having to accompany Mu Xiaowan in this charade, how could I put up with this kind of humiliation? Mu Xiaowan saw my embarrassment and gently tugged my arm. I turned my head, smiled at her, and sat back down. "How long have you known Xiaowan?" Mu Xiaowan's father looked at me and asked indifferently. "Almost a month," I told him, which was the answer I had given to Mu Xiaowan before coming here. "Humph." Hearing my words, Mu Xiaowan's brother let out a cold huff, gave me a sideways glance, and looked disgusted. I wasn't really angry at this person at once, is it human nature? A sister so beautiful is about to be driven away by another man, it is only natural that Mu Xiaowan's brother should feel a little awkward. "You've only known each other for such a short time, do you understand each other?" Mu Xiaowan's father asked indifferently. I glanced at Mu Xiaowan, who pouted slightly. "Dad, Chong'an is a good person, I believe I won't be wrong." Mu Xiaowan said coquettishly to her father. Mu Xiaowan's father didn't say anything. His brother snorted, "Humph, you've known each other for such a short time, and you don't even know who he is? Don't let yourself be fooled and count your money for someone else." "Brother, how can you say that about Chong'an?" Mu Xiaowan said to her brother, a little angry. Mu Feng snorted and said no more. I was a little annoyed. This guy has been giving me a cold stare ever since we met. Now the meaning of what he said is clearly that I'm a bad person. I can't stand that tone. I smiled a little, extended my hand, and put it around Mu Xiaowan's shoulders. "Uncle, big brother, please rest assured, in Hangzhou I will definitely take care of Xiaowan," I said to the two of them with a smile. When I put my arm around Mu Xiaowan's shoulders, I could clearly feel her body stiffen slightly. Then Mu Xiaowan looked up at me, her eyes seemed a little incredulous. After all, hugging her in front of his father and brother was not in our prior agreement. Seeing Mu Xiaowan in my arms, Mu Feng's face instantly turned ashen, and he looked as if he wanted to come over and tear me apart. Mu Lianqing on the other hand just raised an eyebrow, his expression unchanged. "Xiaowan, I will be good to you in the future." I bowed my head and whispered to Mu Xiaowan in my arms. I did this completely to anger Mu Feng, who has always been so hostile towards me. The effect is obvious. Mu Feng is clearly on the verge of losing his temper. Mu Xiaowan reached out and gave me a hard twist at the waist, and the pain almost made me scream. I knew the time had come. If we continued, Mu Feng would really turn his back on us, and the situation would be difficult to clean up. I smiled and let go of the arm around Mu Xiaowan. I'm a very open-minded person. Since Xiaowan likes you, I don't have a problem with it. Mu Lianqing looked at me, gave a faint smile, and then continued, but I have to tell you one thing in advance. Xiaowan is my daughter, Mu Lianqing's daughter. My daughter cannot be bullied by others. In the future, no matter if you are together or not, I don't want to see my daughter suffer any injustice at your hands. Mu Lianqing looked at me. Although his tone was very light, I actually felt a tremendous pressure under his gaze, a pressure that made it difficult for me to breathe. I have no doubt about Mu Lianqing's words. If I let Mu Xiaowan suffer any injustice, I will definitely suffer a miserable end. I looked at Mu Lianqing, feeling a little nervous. Who exactly is he? Although Mu Xiaowan told me that her father is just an ordinary person, I am not stupid. With the kind of aura that Mu Lianqing has, how could he be an ordinary person? The aura of a person in power needs to be cultivated over time, and an ordinary person cannot fake it even if they try. Since entering the door, I have been observing Mu Lianqing and his son. They carry an aura of power in every move they make. This aura must have been cultivated over a long period of time in a high position. It is easy to become a rich person, as long as you have money. But it is difficult to become a noble. As the saying goes, it takes 3 generations to cultivate a noble, and this is not an exaggeration at all. Today, in Mu Lianqing and his son, I see the kind of noble air that belongs to the noble. I glanced at Mu Xiaowan and felt a bit of bitterness in my heart. What exactly is the background of his family? This time, he pretended to be her boyfriend and even met her father and brother. How can this end well in the future? But despite the complaints, since she has already pretended, there is no turning back now, so she can only grit her teeth and go on pretending. Uncle, don't worry, I really like Xiaowan, and I will never let her suffer in the future. If anyone dares to bully her, I won't let it happen, no matter who it is. What I said was half true and half false. What I meant was that Mu Xiaowan is not my girlfriend, but what I really meant was that if Mu Xiaowan is bullied, I will fight to the death. After so long of contact, Mu Xiaowan has an indescribable feeling in my heart. This girl has already become very important to me. Upon hearing my words, Mu Lianqing nodded, and even Mu Feng, who had been cold-faced, softened his expression a little. I hope what you say can be done. Mu Lianqing said to me. Dad, don't worry, Chong'an keeps his word. Mu Xiaowan glanced at Mu Lianqing and then looked at me and smiled. Lianqiang's smile was bright and from the bottom of his heart. Okay, I don't have anything to say, let's eat. After Mu Lianqing finished speaking, he picked up his chopsticks. I quickly stood up, picked up the prepared maotai, respectfully poured a glass for Mu Lianqing, and refilled it for Mu Feng. Although Mu Feng still looked at me with some hostility in his eyes, he did not refuse. Today is the first time I've met you, I toast you, uncle and big brother. I said, raising my glass and drinking it all in one go. Mu Lianqing also picked up his glass and took a small sip. Mu Feng, on the other hand, took a breath and gulped it down. At the dinner table, Mu Lianqing ate while chatting with me in a lukewarm manner. I answered seriously according to the words I had rehearsed with Mu Xiaowan. After about half an hour, Mu Lianqing put down his chopsticks, picked up a tissue, gently wiped the corner of his mouth, and then said to Mu Xiaowan, Xiaowan, you and your brother haven't seen each other for a long time. Go out and take a walk and chat. Chan and I have something to talk about. Chapter 102 The Ascendant. Upon hearing his words, both Mu Xiaowan and I were stunned. I turned to look at Mu Xiaowan, and Mu Xiaowan also looked at me, with a hint of panic in her eyes. I never thought that Mu Lianqing would ask Mu Xiaowan to go away and speak to me alone. This was something neither of us had expected. Dad, you can tell me anything here. Mu Xiaowan smiled at Mu Lianqing. Go for a walk with your brother, this is the first time he's been to Hangzhou. Mu Lianqing said with a smile. Mu Feng had already stood up and said to Mu Xiaowan, that's right, Xiaowan, I haven't been to Hangzhou before, so you can show me around. Mu Xiaowan saw that she couldn't refuse anymore, and looked at me with some concern. I let out a breath, smiled at Mu Xiaowan, nodded, and signaled for her to go, saying that I could handle the situation. Then I'll go out and hang out with my brother. Mu Xiaowan winked at me, picked up her bag, and walked out with Mu Feng. Seeing them leave the house, Mu Lianqing took out a cigarette, lit it, and without hurrying to speak, took a drag. I looked at him, wondering what he wanted to talk to me about after he had sent Mu Xiaowan away. You worked hard today, putting on a show for me with Xiaowan. Mu Lianqing flicked the ashes off his cigarette and said to me. His words made me freeze. What did he mean? Had he already seen through the act between Mu Xiaowan and me? My thoughts raced, and after a moment of contemplation, I suspected that he was bluffing. If I said the wrong thing and revealed the truth, wouldn't I be betraying Mu Xiaowan? Uncle, you. What did you say? I asked him with a smile. Come on, don't pretend. You're not Xiaowan's boyfriend. I know that. I already investigated your background thoroughly yesterday. You just live next door to Xiaowan and run a bar. Mu Lianqing said indifferently. Hearing his words, I was shocked and couldn't close my mouth for a long time. Suddenly, I felt like a clown. I had just pretended for a long time, but I didn't expect that he had already investigated my background thoroughly. However, I immediately realized a very serious problem. Mu Xiaowan said that he had just arrived in Hangzhou yesterday, and he had only spent one day investigating my background. What does this show? It is enough to show that the man in front of me has abilities that I can't imagine. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't want to come, but Xiaowan insisted that I come, so I couldn't refuse her. I explained a little awkwardly. Mu Lianqing nodded with a smile, as if he didn't care about any of this. These are trivial matters. Xiaowan is my daughter. As long as it's not something too extreme, I won't interfere. Mu Lianqing said, looking up at me with a twinkle in his eyes. It's you who interests me. What do you mean by that? I couldn't help but use respectful language when speaking to Mu Lianqing. He is Mu Xiaowan's senior, and most importantly, I felt a kind of aura in him that only someone in a position of power could have, which made me have to respect him a little more. You were originally just a nobody, but in less than a month, you were able to complete a magnificent transformation, which is really a bit surprising. I know everything you've been doing in Hangzhou during this time. You have ambition and ability, and I have high hopes for you. I looked at Mu Lianqing, and my hands involuntarily clenched. Facing him at this moment, I actually felt a deep sense of fear. In just one day, not only did he find out that Mu Xiaowan and I were just pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend, he also managed to find out so much about me. This is definitely not something that an ordinary rich and powerful person could do. Not to mention the fact that he is not from Hangzhou, and yet he was able to find out so much in just one day, so the connections he has must be terrifying. Who exactly are you? I let out a breath, suppressed the fear in my heart, and asked him. That's not important, and even if you knew, it wouldn't mean anything to you, he said indifferently. I was silent. Mu Lianqing was definitely not simple. I believe that even if you looked for someone with this ability throughout Hangzhou, you wouldn't find anyone, not even Chang Bo. Just who is he? Xiaowan is my daughter, and I can read her mind. Although you two haven't had a relationship yet, I can tell that Xiaowan still has some feelings for you. Mu Lianqing changed the subject directly. I haven't thought about that, I told him. I was telling the truth. Although I had a good impression of Mu Xiaowan in my heart, I got along with her more as a good friend. It's not that I hadn't thought of other things, it's just that I felt there was a gap between Mu Xiaowan and myself. After all, she was still a girl, and I had already been divorced, so I reminded myself to keep a good distance from her when I was with her. It doesn't matter if I haven't thought about it or if I have, after all, who can say for sure about the feelings between young people? Mu Lianqing smiled and flicked the ashes. Although you are not boyfriend and girlfriend yet, what I just said still counts. If you let Xiaowan suffer any injustice, I won't let you off the hook. Although his words were said lightly, the meaning behind them still gave me an inexplicable pressure. Don't worry, uncle. Xiaowan is my friend, and I won't let her suffer any injustice. I said to Mu Lianqing. Well, you are a reliable person, and I believe what you say. Mu Lianqing narrowed his eyes and looked at me before speaking again. It's just that recently, it seems like you haven't been having an easy time, and this Hangzhou seems like it's about to fall into chaos. His words didn't surprise me much. After all, how could someone who was able to find out all about me within the first day not know what's been going on in Hangzhou recently? It is a bit chaotic, with a lot of things going on recently. I said. I looked at Mu Lianqing. From his words, I could deduce that he must be at a very high level, at least there is no one in Hangzhou who was higher than him. Because I could feel in his tone that when he mentioned Hangzhou, it was an attitude of a superior looking down. What should I do in the future? I hope you can give me some advice. Thinking about this, I said to him without hesitation. Since he stands high enough, he can certainly see far enough. Therefore, he should be able to see something about the current situation in Hangzhou. Ha ha ha, you really are a smart person. Mu Lianqing laughed out loud, and then said to me, "But this time I can help you. If you want to become a superior person, there are some things that you have to face yourself." I don't understand, do you understand? Chapter 103, Chang Bo calls. I looked at Mu Lianqing and nodded. I have been able to determine that he is no ordinary person. To Hangzhou, he is a dragon crossing the river. From his performance, Hangzhou is nothing more than a small pond in his eyes. And these so-called big shots in Hangzhou are naturally not on the same level as him. Who exactly is Mu Lianqing? Hangzhou may be a small pond, but you are still just a small loach. This is the right place for you. Only by surviving here will you be qualified to go to a wider place. It all depends on yourself. Mu Lianqing looked at me and said, I know, thank you for your advice, I said respectfully. I hope that one day I can see you get out of this pond, and we can have a drink then. Mu Lianqing said with a smile. I also hope that day will come. I said to Mu Lianqing with a smile. If you want to get ahead and climb higher, ability is only secondary. The most important thing is to survive. If you die, then you have nothing. Mu Lianqing said lightly again. I nodded without saying a word. The fact that Mu Lianqing could say this to me proved that he already regarded me as a junior who could be helped. Of course, I knew clearly in my heart that it was difficult for ordinary young people in his position to get his attention. The reason why he was special to me was more because of Mu Shaowan. In fact, until now, I have a good impression of Mu Lianqing. Because he has never shown me that condescending attitude, not even Mu Feng. Although Mu Feng is cold towards me, he doesn't look down on me. More importantly, he is Mu Shaowan's father, and Mu Shaowan and I are friends, so he is also considered my elder. Hangzhou is ultimately a small place, and everyone who is anyone here is someone else's underling. Mu Lianqing said, sighed, and continued, in fact, who in this world is not someone else's pawn? I didn't know what Mu Lianqing meant by this, so I didn't respond. Mu Lianqing didn't seem to want to continue either, and changed the subject, asking me what Mu Shaowan had been doing recently. I told him everything I knew. Just like that, we chatted for a while, and Mu Shaowan and Mu Feng returned. Chen Chong'an, how did your chat with my dad go? Mu Shaowan walked up to me and naturally put her arm around my shoulder, which made Mu Feng frown. I felt a little embarrassed, thinking to myself that the old man already knew that we were pretending to be a couple, so it was really a bit awkward to keep up the pretense. However, Mu Lianqing's expression was natural, and you couldn't tell that there was anything awkward about it. He said to Mu Shaowan with a smile, I had a really nice chat with Chang'an. He's a nice young man. Really? Dad, it's been a long time since I've seen you praise someone like this. Mu Shaowan grinned. Okay, we've met, we're leaving. Mu Lianqing said as he walked towards the door, and Mu Shaowan and I hurriedly saw him off. When we arrived at the hotel entrance, Mu Lianqing got into a black sedan, which was made domestically and looked very ordinary. It was just the bodyguard who got out of the car to open the door for him that made me take a closer look. The man was burly, and although he was wearing a suit, he couldn't hide the bulging muscles on his body. He is Mu Lianqing's bodyguard. For someone like Mu Lianqing, his bodyguard must also be a powerful ancient martial artist. Mu Lianqing got into the car without saying anything, just waved his hand and then left. I waved at Yi Yuanba, who was standing in the doorway, called a car, and returned to my place as well. When I arrived at the apartment, Mu Shaowan went back to her room first. Yi Yuanba gave me a wink, and I could tell from his expression that he must have something to tell me, so I followed him into the room. Brother Yuanba, what's the matter? I asked Yi Yuanba. Yi Yuanba glanced at the door and asked me, her father is very extraordinary. I nodded and said to Yi Yuanba, well, I can see it. The bodyguard who drove him was the person I fought with last night, Yi Yuanba said. What, last night you fought with him? Yi Yuanba's words took me by surprise. I didn't expect that the person who came to fight with him last night was actually Mu Lianqing's bodyguard. Okay, I understand. I nodded. Although I was a little surprised, I could understand. After all, Mu Shaowan and I were getting close, and it was understandable that Mu Lianqing would not feel at ease about his daughter and would want to send someone to test the waters. After all, the hearts of parents are pitiful. Mu Lianqing would probably feel more at ease seeing that I had a bodyguard like Yi Yuanba by my side. I was about to turn around and go to Mu Shaowan when the phone rang. I picked up the phone and glanced at the number, which was unfamiliar. I answered it a little strangely, and a familiar voice came from the other end. Is that Chen? It's Chang Bo.
Hello, Chang Bo, I'm not sure what you're calling me so late at night for. I said respectfully. Although I sounded respectful, I was actually wondering what he was calling me for. According to Mu Xiaowan and my reasoning, Chang Bo was highly suspicious of the assassination of Yi Qing, so what did he want to call me at this hour for? I hope I'm not disturbing you by calling you so late at night. Chang Bo asked with a hint of a smile in his voice. No, Chang Bo, if you need anything, just let me know. I said with a smile. I do have something to discuss with you. How about we meet at the Jufu Tea House tomorrow morning? Chang Bo said in a tone of consultation. Okay, I will definitely be there tomorrow morning. I said. Okay, in that case, I won't bother you anymore. We will see each other tomorrow. Chang Bo hung up the phone. I held the phone in my hand for a while, a little dazed, not knowing what Chang Bo wanted to see me about tomorrow. He is the most powerful man in Hangzhou, and my status is not comparable to his at all, so he doesn't even deserve to look at me. Besides, Chang Bo and I have never really spoken much, so naturally we don't have any friendship. What could he possibly want with me? No matter what he wants, since he invited me, I have to go tomorrow. At worst, I can talk about it when I get there. Although Chang Bo is very powerful, he wouldn't dare make things difficult for a newcomer like me, right? Chapter 104 Project. Early the next morning, I called Zhao Yuejin and took Yi Yuanba with me directly to the Jufu Tea House. The reason I brought Zhao Yuejin along was because he was a bit quicker on the uptake, and I could consult him about anything. The bar was almost completely renovated, so it was enough to have Meng Chong and Lu Liang keeping an eye on things. When we arrived at the tea house and walked into the private room, in addition to Chang Bo, there was also his personal bodyguard Xiujiu, but to my surprise, Zhao Sihai was also there. Chen is here. Sit. Seeing me come in, Chang Bo smiled and turned his head, waving at me. Zhao Sihai on the side smiled and nodded at me. I walked directly to the sofa, sat down, and respectfully said to Chang Bo, you told me to come over, what are your instructions? Chang Bo smiled, waved his hand, and said, I can't really call it instructions, I just want to ask this young man to help an old man like me. You're too kind, Chang Bo. There's nothing in Hangzhou that I need your help with, I said politely. Given Chang Bo's position, if he were to spread the word in Hangzhou, I was afraid that the people who wanted to help him would be lining up around the block. It would never be me, so I knew full well that Chang Bo was just being polite. Do you know anything about the renovation of the old residential area in the south of the city? Chang Bo asked me with a smile, without further preamble. I nodded. There is an old neighborhood in the south of Hangzhou, where all the retired old workers live. The government has been trying to transform that area into commercial housing for several years. However, it has been very difficult, and the progress has never started. The main reason is that the retired elderly people are making a lot of noise, and the officials are afraid of the bad influence, so they have not taken any coercive measures. However, the area is becoming more and more dilapidated, which greatly affects the cityscape, and this has become a source of worry for the previous leaders of Hangzhou. What do you mean by that, Chang Bo? I looked at Chang Bo and asked him. The new leadership team of Hangzhou has just been adjusted, and they have made up their mind to move that area. I have already secured this project through my connections, Chang Bo said with a smile. I looked at the smiling old man in front of me and felt a deep shock in my heart. That residential area belonged to the family compounds of several old factories, covering an area of more than 200 acres, and it was located in the south of the city. Everyone knew that the renovation project for that place would be a big cake, and whoever could win the project would make a fortune. I never expected that Chang Bo would win the project, and from his tone, I could tell that he didn't seem to have made much effort to win such a big project. Another key point is that he is familiar with the current leadership team in Hangzhou. I looked at the indifferent old man in front of me and felt a little envy. This is the strength of Chang Bo, who can easily take over projects worth tens of billions of dollars. I really can't compare with him in terms of this kind of courage and skill. Chang Bo, what do you need me to do? I asked Chang Bo. He had already taken over the project, so logically speaking, it had nothing to do with me. I didn't know what he meant by asking me to come. A project of this scale is certainly too much for an old man like me to handle. As I get older, my appetite decreases and my stamina fails to keep up. So for some things, I would like to ask you young people to help me, an old man, share the burden a little. If you are willing, I will leave the demolition here to you, Chang Bo said with a smile. Demolition is handed over to me? Hearing Chang Bo's words, I didn't react for a while and froze for a moment.
Zhao Yuejin on the side was full of excitement and gently tugged on my sleeve. I then came back to my senses and understood what Chang Bo meant. He wanted me to demolish the old residential area. For this kind of demolition of old residential areas, the government's demolition subsidies are very generous. That place is nearly 200 acres. And it's quite a lot of money. Why, don't you want to do it? Chang Bo asked me with a smile. I took a breath to calm myself down and asked Chang Bo, I don't know why you would want me. Although that piece of cake is very tempting, I am just a newcomer in Hangzhou and not yet qualified to enter the circles of people like you. But today, you have given me the responsibility of the demolition there, which is like cutting a piece of cake for me for no reason. I have always believed in one truth: there is no such thing as a free lunch, and there is no such thing as love without reason. We are not related, so what does he want by giving me such a big favor for no reason? Ha ha ha, the young man is quite cautious, but this is good. This will also allow you to go a little further. Only those who are smart enough will live long. Chang Bo said with a smile. Brother Chen, don't be paranoid, I already said it a long time ago, Chang Bo values you and will promote you sooner or later, you see, I was right, right? Zhao Sihai on the side said to me with a smile. Although he said that, I still looked at Chang Bo, wanting him to give me an explanation. You are Yi Qing's favorite person. Yi Qing is not here right now, so if I hand this project over to you, it will not be given to an outsider. Besides, I have seen what you have done recently, and I like it. You are smart and ruthless, just the way young people should be. Chang Bo said, looking up at me and continuing, nowadays, it is rare to find outstanding young people. I want you to stand a little taller, so are you willing to do it? I looked at Chang Bo. Even if I were a fool, I would understand what Chang Bo meant now. He was deliberately promoting me. Now, although I have established myself in Xiaxia and taken care of Shuzhe, I am still an insignificant little player in Hangzhou. The key reason for this is that I have no connections. At best, I only have that bar, which is a world apart from the real big shots in Hangzhou. If I want to join Chang Bo's circle, I need experience and my own capital. And now, this demolition project that Chang Bo has given me is the capital that will allow me to move up a step. Chen, you're lucky to have caught Chang's eye. He loves to mentor newcomers. Hurry up and thank Chang. Zhao Sihai said with a smile. I glanced at Zhao Yuejin next to me and saw a flash of joy in his eyes. He nodded at me. I knew this was my chance. No matter what Chang's motives were, if I took over this project and did a good job, I would make a lot of money and my reputation would rise. Thank you, Chang Bo, for taking an interest in me. I'll take on this project. I hurriedly said to Chang Bo. Ah, I thought you were afraid. Young people really have courage. I have high hopes for you. Chang Bo smiled and nodded at me, his eyes full of appreciation. Then I'll leave this project in your hands. Tomorrow you can go register a company. I'll put in a good word with the industrial and commercial authorities, and I won't make things difficult for you. I hope to see you make a big splash. Chang Bo said, stood up, and walked towards the door with his bodyguard. Thank you, Chang Bo. I also stood up and bowed to Chang Bo's back. Chapter 105, It Must Be Done. Chang Bo left, but Zhao Sihai did not follow. Instead, he got up, smiled and poured me a cup of tea, glancing at Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba. Zhao Yuejin is a smart man and knows that Zhao Sihai has something to tell me. He nodded to Yi Yuanba and the two of them walked out. Congratulations, Chen. This project is very profitable. Once you complete it, you'll be able to turn over a new leaf. Zhao Sihai said to me with a smile. It's all thanks to Chang Bo, otherwise, how could this project have come my way? I said with a smile. I meant what I said. Anyone can see how profitable this project is. If it weren't for Chang Bo, it would never have come my way. Chang Bo has always been like this, taking good care of young people. But on the other hand, it's also because you're capable that Chang Bo has taken notice of you. Zhao Sihai said with a smile. I'm just worried about not being able to do a good job on this project. I frowned a little and said. Although I have never experienced demolition before, I know the difficulty involved. Especially since most of the people in that area are retired old workers, they are very difficult to deal with. Hangzhou City has changed several leadership teams without solving this problem. Now if I am asked to demolish there, it will be really difficult for me. Don't worry, some opportunities are already difficult to seize. Now that you have seized it, you must do your best regardless of the consequences. Zhao Sihai said to me with a serious expression. I nodded. I don't know how many people in Hangzhou are eyeing this project, but Chang Bo gave it to me. He gave me not just this project, but also an opportunity. So no matter what, I have to seize this opportunity. You want to start a new company, and demolition requires a lot of equipment, forklifts, cranes, and so on, as well as a lot of manpower, otherwise you won't be able to do it. Zhao Sihai looked at me and said. I nodded. Since we were going to do demolition, equipment was a must, and manpower was even more so. Demolition would encounter a lot of resistance, and without people, we simply couldn't control the situation. Meng Chong had a few dozen people under him, but his territory was in Xiaxia, and he couldn't get involved in the south of the city. And to set up a company and get the project running, you needed a lot of money. I had a headache when I first arrived here. Although the bar had made some money during this period of time, it was still not enough. Do I have to go to Zhu Yeqing and borrow money? I always have a standard for Zhu Yeqing, which is that I will never ask her for help with things I can solve on my own. Because Zhu Yeqing has already helped me enough, I don't want to owe her too much. Zhao Sihai looked at me and smiled, then said lightly, Brother, you don't have enough funds right now, do you? I gave a wry smile at Zhao Sihai and nodded. It was a bit difficult. Don't worry, brother. I've already thought of it for you. Tomorrow, after you register the company, have someone give me the public account, and I'll deposit 5 million yuan into it for you. Zhao Sihai waved his hand generously. This is embarrassing. I looked at Zhao Sihai, a little surprised that he could lend me so much money at once. What's the big deal? Aren't we brothers? This little money is just a drop in the bucket. Zhao Sihai spoke with an air of wealth and arrogance. I looked at Zhao Sihai, and a sense of powerlessness arose in my heart. It is true that people should envy each other. 5 million is like an astronomical number for me now, but this guy can just wave his hand and get it out, which is really enviable. Okay, since you've asked, I'll take the money. After the company is established, I'll give you 10% of the shares. I thought about it for a moment and said to Zhao Sihai. After all, he offered 5 million right away. Without this money, my company can't even get started. So after thinking it over, I decided to give him 10% of the company's shares. Don't be polite, this is your first company, so I won't get involved. Just wait until you've earned the 5 million and then pay me back. If you're embarrassed, we can just follow the bank's interest rate. Zhao Sihai said nonchalantly. In that case, I thank you, brother. When my company is established, I will definitely buy you a few drinks. Zhao Sihai had already said what he had to say, so I didn't need to be polite with him. Also, you must remember that although Chang Bo has handed over this project to you, there are quite a few people who are jealous, and you are likely to encounter a lot of trouble. Zhao Sihai was a little worried. I nodded, understanding what Zhao Sihai meant. This project is too lucrative, and I don't know how many people are eyeing it. Now Chang Bo has given this project to a newcomer like me, those people are definitely not happy. Out of respect for Chang Bo, they dare not do anything on the surface, but behind his back they will definitely try to trip me up. As long as there is competition for profit, it will be cruel and dark. Only if I can't continue working will they have a chance. Zhao Sihai saw this and that's why he reminded me. I know. I nodded. Zhao Sihai patted my shoulder and continued, there are some things that Chang Bo won't help you with anymore, so you have to handle them yourself. I nodded. I'm a newcomer, and Chang Bo has already been kind enough to give me such a big project. If I have to trouble him for anything in the future, it will only prove that I'm incompetent. So I'll handle any trouble that arises during the demolition process myself. If I can't handle it, the result is simple, I'll be fired. Since I'm incompetent, I naturally don't deserve to work. In the south of the city, Dao Kuei on the road is on good terms with me. I'll set it up, and you guys can get to know each other over a drink. His men are fierce fighters and dare to get their hands dirty. With his help, they can intimidate a lot of people. Brother Zhao, thank you so much. I looked at Zhao Sihai and said sincerely. Although Zhao Sihai had his own agenda in approaching me, from the current perspective, he was at least sincerely helping me, so my gratitude was also sincere. We're on the same team, so there's no need for formalities. Zhao Sihai chuckled and patted me on the shoulder. Brother, I look forward to seeing you successfully complete this project. Hangzhou will definitely have a place for you then. I looked at Zhao Sihai and nodded vigorously. I knew very well that this project would be a turning point in my life. Although I now had a bar, it was after all given to me by Zhu Yiqing, and the venue did not truly belong to me.
However, the demolition project in Chong'an is my own. If I can complete this project, all the money I make will be mine. This project will not only allow me to gain considerable wealth, but also make a name for myself in Hangzhou.
Therefore, no matter how much resistance there is to this project, I must do it well. Chapter 106, Startup Capital. I had a chat with Zhao Sihai for a while. He is an experienced and successful person who has taught me a lot, and I have benefited greatly from it.
Now I admire Zhao Sihai more and more.
I used to think that he was a simple-minded person who had been steadily outshone by Zhu Yeqing and Hangzhou over the years. But now, the more I get to know him, the more I admire him. Zhao Sihai is a truly clever person, and those who think they are clever really look like clowns in his presence. As the saying goes, the smarter someone is, the more they like to act dumb, while the less intelligent someone is, the more they flaunt their intelligence. A person who hides their wisdom and shows off their stupidity is truly wise. I had a great chat with Zhao Sihai, and after we left, I took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba back to the Qinglian bar. Zhao Yuejin was even more excited than I was the whole way there. He knew that if we pulled this project off, I would really have a place in Hangzhou. Back at the venue, I called Meng Chong and Lu Liang into my office. Apart from Zhao Jiafang, who was protecting Zhu Yeqing, all my people in Hangzhou were there. They would all become my right-hand men in the future. I announced that we had won the project, and everyone was very happy. Since we were going to set up a company, what should we call it? Meng Chong asked with a grin. He had started out as a thug and had been on the streets for years. Although Meng Chang's brain is a bit simple, as a gangster who wants to fight and kill every day. It's just that these people have no other ability to make money except fighting and killing. Meng Chong knows very well that this project will keep him and his gang of brothers busy, so Meng Chong is most enthusiastic about it. As for the name, let's call it the Chang'an Demolition Company. Since it's in GE's company, naturally it will use in GE's name. Besides, what a lucky name. Zhao Yuejin looked at me and asked for my opinion. As for what to name the company, I hadn't had time to think about it yet, but after hearing Zhao Yuejin's words, I thought it was not bad. Okay, let's call our company Chang'an Demolition. I nodded. Okay, Chang'an Demolition, damn it, this time we must make a name for ourselves. I'll have the brothers come over tomorrow, and go, just let me know if you need anything. Meng Chong said excitedly. There's no need to rush, the company hasn't even been registered yet. I said to Meng Chong with a bitter smile. Hey, I'm just really excited. Meng Chong lifted his hand, touched his bald head, and grinned foolishly. Seeing him smile, everyone else also smiled. A heroic feeling arose in my heart. I knew that I had now taken a step forward, and as for whether I can stand firm, it depends on whether I have the ability. But I'm not afraid at all. Since I've been able to come this far, I have no turning back. No matter what I'll encounter ahead, I can't turn back. After all, there is no turning back. We had a brief chat and then left the office. At this point, I was the only one left in the office. I thought about it for a moment, picked up my phone, and dialed Zhu Yeqing's number. For her safety, I haven't visited her for more than half a month, just calling every other day. I know that Zhu Yeqing's injuries are almost healed now, and she can get out of bed and walk a little, but she can't walk far and still needs a wheelchair. Han Yi has been taking care of her, and I was worried about the two getting along. After all, Zhu Yeqing is such a strong and domineering daughter, and Han Yi is equally outstanding. Very often, two outstanding people cannot get along peacefully. It is because these people are all high-spirited, and naturally they don't like each other. But to my surprise, Han Yi and Zhu Yeqing get along very well. And the day before yesterday, I heard Han Yi say that she and Zhu Yeqing had already agreed to become sisters-in-law. When I heard this news, I couldn't help but sigh, and I realized that the fate between people is really something that cannot be described. If it were normal, who would have thought that Zhu Yeqing and Han Yi would cross paths, and that they would become sisters-in-law? You have something on? Zhu Yeqing's voice came over the phone. President Zhu, there's something I want to tell you. I weighed up the situation and said to Zhu Yeqing. I hadn't seen her for more than half a month, but now that I heard her voice, the image of that flirtatious woman in a red cheongsam immediately came to mind. Zhu Yeqing was a very special woman, and it seemed that she always dressed in the same way. No matter the season, she always wore a red cheongsam with a high slit, a pair of red high heels, and painted her lips a bright red. Since Do Liang's death, that had been the image she had been seen in for all these years. Bright red is a color that is difficult for ordinary women to master. Bright red is vulgar, but also elegant. A woman who can't handle this color will look vulgar when wearing it. However, the bright red cheongsam worn by Zhu Yeqing does not look vulgar at all, but only makes her look more enchanting, just like a blooming bright red peony flower. What is it? You said. Zhu Yeqing's voice rang again on the phone, interrupting my thoughts. It's Chang Bo. He looked for me today. I told Zhu Yeqing. Oh, Chang Bo, what did he want with you? Zhu Yeqing seemed a little surprised. The old neighborhood in the south of the city is going to be demolished. Chang Bo has taken over the project and wants to hand over the demolition to me. I told Zhu Yeqing. My tone was a little careful. Zhu Yeqing gave me the bar, so from the outside, I am Zhu Yeqing's man. And now, I have taken over Chang Bo's project, so I am a little worried that Zhu Yeqing will have other ideas. You are indeed lucky to have Chang Bo value you so highly. Zhu Yeqing was silent for a moment on the other end of the phone, and then said lightly. I think there is a lot of profit in this project, don't you think so? I tried to get Zhu Yeqing's attitude. Zhu Yeqing is a smart person and of course knows what I am thinking. She laughed lightly and said, being able to win this project is an opportunity for you, so you must seize it. Hearing Zhu Yeqing's words, I was relieved and knew that she did not have any objections. However, you are just starting out, so you should need startup capital, right? Zhu Yeqing added. Zhao Sihai has already lent me 5 million, which should be enough. I didn't hide anything and told Zhu Yeqing about Zhao Sihai's loan. Zhao Sihai, he was pretty quick. Zhu Yeqing laughed lightly and continued, 5 million is still a bit less, and this is your first company, so it would be unreasonable for me not to help you. Tomorrow, you go to the Zhu family and tell Zhu Zhe to take out 5 million. Chapter 107, The Big Boss of Chong'an. Going to the Zhu family? I hesitated for a moment. Yes, over the years Zhu Zhe has made a lot of money in my name, and 5 million is nothing to him. Besides, you tell him to get out of the Zhu family before I get back, or I'll make him lose everything. Zhu Yeqing said coldly. Okay, I got it. I nodded and hung up. I was not at all surprised that Zhu Yeqing would expel Zhu Zhe from the Zhu family. After all, Zhu Zhe had once wanted to kill Zhu Yeqing. He was Zhu Yeqing's own uncle, so Zhu Yeqing would not get rid of him, but he would not be able to stay in the Zhu family either. Zhu Yeqing's meaning was very clear, Zhu Zhe was to be expelled from the Zhu family. I don't think Zhu Zhe should have any complaints, because if someone else had done that to Zhu Yeqing, they would have been thrown into the Qiantang River to feed the fish. Early the next morning, I took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba to a company that registered businesses on behalf of industrial and commercial firms. The company was designated by Chang Bo, and was very efficient. After filling out the information, they said that they could obtain the business license and open the company within 2 days. After that, I went to the Zhu family. When I walked into the courtyard, only Zhu Zhe was sitting alone at the stone table in the courtyard. When he saw us come in, there was no change in his expression. He raised his hand and pushed a bank card under his hand to me, and then said, there are 5 million yuan in this card, and the password is written on the card. At this time, Zhu Zhe no longer had the arrogance of the past. He was listless and dispirited, and there were a lot more gray hairs on his head, as if his spirit was completely gone. I glanced at him and felt a little pity for him. Although he has always been the nominal head of the Zhu family, over the years, only Zhu Yeqing has had the final say in the family's affairs, and he, Zhu Zhe, has been more like a puppet. This time, Zhu Yeqing will have an accident, and he got the news in advance, so his mind went astray. He wanted Zhu Yeqing to die, and then he would be the head of the entire Zhu family. He just forgot one thing, the current status of the Zhu family in Hangzhou, and his own status, is entirely due to Zhu Yeqing. If Zhu Yeqing is gone, then no one in Hangzhou will care about the Zhu family. The wealth and assets owned by the Zhu family are like a delicious cake that will be divided up in no time. To put it bluntly, Zhu Zhe is unwilling to accept this, but he has forgotten that he does not have the strength to do anything about it. He is the type of person who is blinded by greed. Now that he has been expelled from the Zhu family, he can be considered to have brought this upon himself. I know you are angry, but I advise you not to do anything else. I am letting you live this time purely because you are her uncle. I put away the bank card on the table and looked at Zhu Zhe. Since he is already prepared, it proves that Zhu Yeqing has already informed him. Zhu Zhe looked up and smiled at me, but the smile was full of bitterness. There is resentment. Where is there any resentment from me? This time, it was my own foolish heart that almost doomed the entire Zhu family. I am the sinner of the Zhu family. It's good that you know this. Take care. I nodded to Zhu Zhe and then turned and left. Wait. Just at this moment, Zhu Zhe suddenly spoke, calling out to me. I turned back and looked at Zhu Zhe, wondering in my heart what he wanted. I know that Yi Qing values you highly and hopes that you can help him more in the future. Zhu Zhe said to me. I looked at Zhu Zhe and could feel that he was truly remorseful now, so what he was saying was from the heart. I will definitely. I nodded and turned to leave. After leaving the Zhu family and just returning to the bar, Zhao Sihai called and said that he would host a dinner that night and we should go to his hotel for a drink. He had invited several bosses on Chang'an Road that night and told me to be sure to go. I was touched, knowing that Zhao Sihai was specifically paving the way for me. After all, I was not well known in Hangzhou, and suddenly getting such a big project, it was strange that those in the south of the city were not jealous. If I didn't first establish a good relationship with him, then I would probably encounter a lot of resistance with my project in the south of the city. I told Zhao Sihai that I would definitely go that night, and then said thank you. Zhao Sihai on the phone laughed heartily, saying that we were all brothers, so why be so polite? At 6 p.m., I arrived punctually at Zhao Sihai's hotel, this time accompanied by Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba. Zhao Yuejin is now my unofficial advisor. I take him with me on important matters, as he is quick-witted and can help me out of trouble. As for Yi Yuanba, he is now my personal bodyguard, so wherever I go, he follows. As soon as we entered the hotel, a waiter came over, called out to me, "Brotherin," and led us to the largest private room. When I opened the door, in addition to Zhao Sihai, there were also 6 or 7 other people sitting inside. These people looked like they had a strong sense of the underworld, and they should all be big bosses who hung out on Chang'an Avenue. Hey, Sihai, you have a guest today. I wonder what this young man is up to. As soon as we entered, the attention of everyone in the room immediately turned towards me. The one speaking to Zhao Sihai was a man in his 50s. Brother Yu, let me introduce you, this is my new friend, Chong'an. Zhao Sihai came over, patted my shoulder, and said with a smile to the other gangsters. Hearing Zhao Sihai's words, the gangsters looked at me with different eyes. Who is Zhao Sihai? Although he doesn't belong to the underworld, he is rich. As long as you have enough money, no matter if you are in the underworld or the white world, you will be given some face. That's why Zhao Sihai has a lot of face in front of these big bosses in the city. Now that he says I'm his brother, these people will certainly look up to me. I quickly glanced at Zhao Sihai and then smiled and said to the crowd, I'm very happy to meet you all, and I hope you can take care of me in the future. The crowd also quickly smiled and nodded at me. Zhao Sihai sat with me for a while, and then began to introduce me one by one. Through his introduction, I also got to know the others a little better. The man who spoke first, Brother Yu, is the biggest gangster in Chang'an City, with hundreds of underlings under his command. He can be considered a tyrant in Chang'an. The slightly tan man sitting to the left and right of Zhao Sihai is De Kuei, whom Zhao Sihai mentioned to me at the beginning. Although De Kuei's strength is not comparable to Brother Yu's, he also has a certain degree of say in Chang'an. As for the other big shots, I also greeted them one by one. Sihai, where are the Chang'an brothers hanging out these days? After the introductions, Brother Yu looked at me and asked Zhao Sihai. Oops, I forgot to tell you all, although Brother Chang'an is new here, I'm afraid he'll be hanging around in the south of the city for a while. I hope everyone will give him some face. Zhao Sihai clapped his hands and said. Oh, Brother Chang'an is going to hang out in the south of the city, I wonder what he's going to do? Brother Yu suddenly became interested and looked me up and down a few times. Brother Yu, didn't Chang Bo get the project for the old residential area in the south of the city? Brother Chang has already handed the demolition of this project over to Brother Chang'an, Zhao Sihai said with a smile. As Zhao Sihai's voice fell, the entire room suddenly fell silent, and everyone looked over at me. There was calmness, envy, and a few resentful glances in these people's gazes. Chapter 108, Draw a Line. Seeing everyone's expressions, Zhao Sihai didn't say anything, but smiled and leaned back in his chair, lighting a cigarette and coldly watching everyone. I also picked up a cigarette and lit it. I wasn't too surprised by their reaction. They were all local snakes in the city, so of course they had been keeping a close eye on the demolition of that area. And now, a newcomer they've never heard of has suddenly snatched the project away from them. How can they accept that? In their eyes, this belongs to the over-the-river dragon suppressing the local snake, reversing the heavens and the earth. Sihai, are you sure what you're saying is true, that Chang Bo really gave him the project? Brother Yu glanced at me and asked Zhao Sihai. Of course it's true, Chang Bo said it himself yesterday. Zhao Sihai gave a faint smile. This answer once again sent Brother Yu into silence. He looked up at me with a complex expression in his eyes, then picked up the cigarette on the table, didn't light it, and exhaled a puff of smoke. The next moment, as if he could finally suppress his anger, he slammed the lighter in his hand onto the table. Damn it, what the hell is Chang Bo up to? 6 months ago, he clearly promised me that he would give me this project. Brother Yu's sudden outburst took everyone by surprise. Zhao Sihai frowned slightly and didn't say anything. I glanced at Brother Yu and was a little surprised. I didn't expect Chang Bo to actually promise him that he would hand over that project to him. No wonder he reacted so strongly. I sneered a little. No matter what Chang Bo told him in the past, now that the project is in my hands, no one can take it away. Damn it, I'm going to ask Chang Bo what the hell he was thinking, handing over this project to a rookie. Can he handle it? Brother Yu is obviously furious, and he's starting to swear in his mouth. Di-Wu, watch what you say. This is Chang Bo's decision. If you don't agree, go and see Chang Bo yourself. Zhao Sihai said somewhat unhappily. But Di-Wu, who was still angry, was not afraid of Zhao Sihai at all, and said angrily, I'm going to go and ask Chang Bo clearly why he would give this project to a rookie. At this point, I knew I had to say something. Now I understood the intention behind Zhao Sihai's arrangement today. This dinner today was not meant to bring them closer together over a meal. This was our first encounter. Compared to these big shots in the south of the city, I am an outsider and a newcomer. As an outsider and newcomer, I have come to the south of the city and taken the biggest piece of cake they have coveted for a long time. These people will of course not be convinced. Zhao Sihai knew very well that this would be the case, so today's dinner was just a test. He wanted to test the reaction of these people in Chong'an through this meal, and then let me see clearly who my opponent would be if I went to Chong'an in the future. Obviously, Brother Yu is definitely my biggest obstacle right now. He was originally the biggest gangster in Chong'an, and if nothing unexpected happened, he would be in charge of this demolition. Even if he didn't take the entire project for himself, he would get the biggest piece. But now, Chang Bo has directly given me the entire project, so he couldn't help but be the first to lose his temper. If I don't silence him now, it will be difficult for me to establish myself in the south of the city in the future. Oh, Brother Yu, what do you mean by that? What's wrong with me taking over this project? I looked at Dayu with a sneer. Dayu was already angry, and now that I had stood up, he directed his anger at me. Where is wrong with you? Look at everyone here, in terms of age and seniority, none of them are older than you. What kind of person are you? I don't know what Chang Bo sees in you. Dayu's words were a bit harsh, but I didn't care about it. Instead, I smiled and said, Brother Yu, you're wrong. You also came from the underworld, so how come you don't know that age and seniority are bullshit in the underworld? When you're in the underworld, it's not about who has the biggest fist who's right. Fuck, what did you say? Are you threatening me? Hearing my words, Dayu immediately became angry, slammed the table and stood up. Seeing Dayu stand up, Zhao Yuejin also stood up, and Yi Yuanba, who had been standing behind me, took a step forward. I waved my hand gently to calm them down, and then smiled and said to Dayu, I dare not, I dare not. Dayu, you are one of the top figures in the city. How could a newcomer like me dare to disrespect you? I said, and then my tone changed, as I said coldly, you, Brother Dayu, are powerful, but since I dare to take over this project, I naturally have my own foundation. Today, Brother Zhao is hosting, and I don't want to make things too awkward. If you're interested, Brother Dayu, why don't we try it out? My words were neither humble nor arrogant, and they were equivalent to a hard slap in Dayu's face. Dayu looked at me, his eyes almost spitting fire. But after all, this was Zhao Sihai's territory, and he really didn't dare to make trouble here. Good boy, you really have some balls. We'll meet again somewhere. Dayu said, picked up his jacket, and yelled at the others, what the hell are you waiting for? A newbie is daring to ride over us and act like a boss. You've got some nerve sitting here. Dayu finished, and directly pulled open the door and walked out of the box. The others looked at each other, stood up, and left one after the other. In a matter of moments, the entire compartment was left with just me, Zhao Yuejin, Yi Yuanba, Zhao Sihai, and Dakwai, who had stayed by his side the whole time. Dakwai was also from Chong'an, but judging from his behavior, he was Zhao Sihai's man. What a mess. A good banquet that broke up before the drinks even started. These guys really can't hold their own in high society. Zhao Sihai glanced at me and laughed, saying, ha. Brother Zhao, you've made me offend all the big bosses in the south of the city today. I laughed and sat down. What's there to be afraid of? It's better to make it clear now than for you to go over there and have those guys secretly trip you up. Zhao Sihai laughed and waved his hand. Chapter 109, The Solution. I took a drag on my cigarette and gave Zhao Sihai a wry smile. It seems that these people in the south of the city don't really welcome me, I said. Now, apart from Daku, all the big bosses in the south of the city have gone, which is obviously not giving me face. Zhao Sihai laughed, as if he was happy to see me get embarrassed. Isn't this normal? Originally, they could all get a share of the pie with that project, but now you, a newcomer, have suddenly come to the fore, leaving them unable to even get a taste. Can they still welcome you? Things have become a bit difficult. I frowned. If there was just one or two people who were dissatisfied, that would be fine, and we could just think of a way to settle it. But now none of these big shots in Chong'an are giving me face, and even if I'm amazing, there's no way I can take care of them all. It is only now that I understand that although this project is highly profitable, it is a hot potato for me. If I don't do it right, I will probably lose everything. Since you have already taken this step, you will have to solve some things on your own. I won't help you, and you shouldn't go to Chang Bo either, because it would be a waste of time. Zhao Sihai looked at me and said with a serious face. I looked at Zhao Sihai and nodded to show that I understood what he meant. Now that Chang Bo has given me this project, he has paved the way for me. The next step is up to me. The road is at my feet. If I can't take it, then I'm a loser, and I don't have what it takes to succeed. Or, to put it another way, this is a test from Chang Bo. How I turn things around will be watched closely. I know this, and since Chang Bo has given me this project, no one can take it away, I said. Zhao Sihai looked at me with interest as I looked so confident, and asked me, "What's your idea?" "Give up some of the profits and divide the others up," I said, flicking the ashes from my cigarette. Zhao Sihai paused for a moment when he heard what I said, then burst out laughing. "Not bad, Chen, you really are a clever man, coming up with a solution so quickly. I'm actually looking forward to seeing you make a big splash in Chong'an." Zhao Sihai is a smart guy, so he understood what I meant without me having to explain much. Now I'm like a dragon crossing the river to the big shots in the south of the city, taking away the benefits that should have belonged to them, so naturally they banded together to fight against me. But this doesn't mean they're united. After all, they're all on the streets and they're always fighting with each other. There's only one thing in the world that can make people fight endlessly and also make them stick together, and that's interests. Before I came along, these big shots in Chong'an were a bunch of loose cannons, even fighting and killing each other every day over territory. But now that I'm here, and I've taken the biggest piece of meat in their eyes, these people immediately rallied together and united against me. It's only natural that I'm now their common enemy. They came together for the sake of profit, and of course they can become a bunch of loose cannons again for the sake of profit. Combining their situation with my own strength, I quickly came up with a way to get a foothold in Chong'an. They think I've eaten up all their interests, so I'll just give them some of my interests. This demolition project is too big, and there's too much profit in it, so I never thought I could take it all for myself in the first place. Giving up some of my interests is the only way to make myself look reasonable. No matter what, if you try to take all the profits for yourself, you'll always be the target of everyone's anger. A truly smart person must know how to give up small gains in exchange for greater gains. They are against me because I have taken away their interests, but now I am sharing the benefits with them, so the opposition no longer exists. Of course, I won't just give them money for nothing. Demolishing that area is very difficult. It will be hard for a foreigner like me to deal with those stubborn homeowners. And these people are all thugs from the south of the city, all local snakes. If they step forward, the demolition work will go much more smoothly. At that time, I will give them a bonus according to the amount of demolition they have done. Everyone will be happy, so why not? You are right. For the time being, this is the best option for you. Zhao Sihai said, paused for a moment, and then continued, but you have to be careful. Your method does not work for everyone, such as Dawu. Dawu? I repeated the name, thinking about the arrogant way he had spoken to me just now, and immediately understood what Zhao Sihai meant. Dawu is the most powerful boss in the entire city, and if it weren't for me, he would probably be handed the Chang Bo project. So when the time comes, he will be the one to decide how the profits are divided. In other words, if it weren't for me, he would decide how the cake is divided. But now, he is no longer in a position to divide the cake, so naturally he is not happy. After all, Dawu is different from the others. For the other bosses, whether Diwu or I divides the cake, it doesn't really matter, as long as they are given enough profit.
But Diwu, how can he obediently listen to what he says?
He won't be willing to accept it, and he will change from a person who divides up the benefits to a person who just eats the melon.
Diwu is a person with a black heart and black hands.
Over the years, many people have fallen prey to him on the road. You have to be careful. At this time, DQ, who was sitting next to Zhao Sihai, said to me, I know that he is Zhao Sihai's man, and he is also one of my own people. I smiled at him, then raised my glass and thanked DQ for his reminder. In the future, in the south of the city, I will need your help and care. I will drink this glass of wine first. I said, raised my face, and gulped down the wine in the glass in one go. Dakwai smiled, raised his glass, and drank it in one go.
Brother Chen is so heroic.
In the future, if you need anything in the south of the city, just let me know, and if that son of a bitch Diwu is moved by you, I can fight him too.
Dakwai said heroically.
I smiled. I could tell that Dakwai was also a straightforward and easygoing person.
We simply ate a little and drank some wine.
After dinner, Zhao Sihai and De Kuei saw us to the door. Standing at the door, Zhao Sihai, already slightly drunk, patted my shoulder lightly and said with a smile, Brother, do a good job in this battle. I'm afraid I'll still be waiting for you to advance with me in the future. I glanced at Zhao Sihai and frowned, feeling that there was something else behind his words.
So I asked him, Brother, is something the matter?
Zhao Sihai looked at me and smiled, but the smile was a little bitter.
Nothing, I just want to stop being someone else's pawn one day.
I hope that one day we brothers can all be truly free.
Chapter 110, Revenge.
I looked at Zhao Sihai's expression and wanted to ask him something, but Zhao Sihai patted my shoulder and said, It's getting late, I won't see you off.
Have a good trip, brother.
I knew that he didn't want to continue that conversation, so I nodded and got into the car with Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba.
But I always had a doubt in my heart.
The last time I talked to Zhao Sihai, he seemed to be worried about something, and today he actually said that he didn't want to be a pawn anymore.
What did he mean, and who could use Zhao Sihai as a pawn?
Back at the residence, I went to Mu Xiaowan's room as usual and told her everything that had happened today. Mu Xiaowan is a girl with a strong sense of judgment, and sometimes she can see further than Zhao Yuejin.
So I've gotten into the habit of consulting her about everything.
Mu Xiaowan listened quietly until I finished, nodded, then looked up and gave me a smile.
Not bad.
Chen Chong'an, you've thought of something very correct this time. You're worthy of following me around, and after all this time, you've finally got some brains. Mu Xiaowan said to me with a smile.
Can you stop being so mean when you talk to me in the future?
After all, you and I are not strangers. I said to Mu Xiaowan with some helplessness.
What a character, who's not a stranger to you. I'm not familiar with you.
Mu Xiaowan said, wrinkling her nose a little, looking incredibly cute.
Hey, I'm still your nominal boyfriend, and I've even met your parents. Don't you deny it, I said to her with a smile. Who says you're my boyfriend? I'm not telling you if that's a fake.
Mu Xiaowan's face suddenly turned a little red, as if she was a little angry. She turned around and snorted, I'm ignoring you, I'm going to sleep. After Mu Xiaowan finished speaking, she turned directly and went to the bedroom. I smiled, tidied up the sofa, took the blanket that Mu Xiaowan had prepared for me a long time ago, and lay down. Now it seems to have become a habit to spend every night in Mu Xiaowan's room.
Early the next morning, I took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba to the south of the city.
Since we were going to start a company, we had to find a place. Zhao Sihai had already found the address for the company, which was a 2-story shopfront. It was a pretty good place, with nice interior decorations, and you could start working there right away after buying some office supplies. I was quite satisfied with the place. Zhao Yuejin took out his phone and called Meng Chong, telling him to go to the furniture store and buy some office supplies and deliver them to the company. I then took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba to the old neighborhood that was about to be demolished. We had just walked halfway around the block when Zhao Yuejin's phone rang.
Zhao Yuejin's face immediately changed when he answered the phone. What's wrong? I asked Zhao Yuejin.
Lu Liang called and said that Meng Chong had been injured and was in the hospital.
Zhao Yuejin's face turned dark. What the fuck, who did it?
Hearing that Meng Chong had actually been beaten, I suddenly became a little anxious.
Lu Liang said they didn't know who it was either.
They were in the furniture store selecting something when suddenly a dozen people rushed in, all of them armed, and started smashing everything in their way.
Meng Chong was beaten up and had 2 ribs broken. Zhao Yuejin's voice was a little cold. Damn it, we've only been here for 1 day and we've already been targeted. This is someone trying to intimidate me. I looked out the window and felt a fire in my heart ignite.
Meng Chong is a very good person and is quite loyal to me, and now he's been seriously injured.
If I don't avenge this, how can I continue to survive? It's Di Wu, he must have done it. I said.
Zhao Yuejin nodded with a gloomy face and said, in this city, besides him, no one else is more
suspicious.
I nodded and said to Zhao Yuejin, let's go to the hospital to see Meng Chong first, and then go find Di Wu.
I had already made up my mind.
Regardless of whether Di Wu did it or not, I had to go find him today. Because now, it didn't matter whether he did it or not. Someone had dared to touch my people on the first day I had just arrived in Chong'an. If I didn't show them my strength, then in the future, wouldn't anyone dare to shit on my head? Di Wu is the most powerful in the south of the city, and it is very likely that he did it.
Even if he didn't, I have to fix him today.
I'll teach him a lesson, and show everyone else who's boss. I'll beat him up first, and see if anyone else in the south of the city doesn't obey. When I arrived at the hospital, Lu Liang, who was bruised and battered, immediately came up to greet me. He took us to the ward, where Meng Chong was lying in bed with a drip in his head, bandaged up. When he saw me come in, Meng Chong turned his head and said to me in a weak voice, I'm sorry, Chang'an brother, I've never done anything like that before, and I brought you shame. I walked up to him and grabbed his hand.
Brother Chong, you're a good man. Now you just focus on getting better, and leave the rest to me.
I want them to know that no one can touch my brother, Chen Chang'an. Seeing Meng Chang's miserable state, I really lost my temper.
How dare they beat up my men like this? I won't let him get away with it.
After spending some time in the hospital, we came out and I called Di Kuei to ask him which place in the area belonged to Di Wu.
Di Kuei told me that there was an electronic game hall on Wenhuo Road that was Di Wu's territory.
Although it appeared to be a game arcade on the surface, it was actually an underground casino that made a lot of money for Di Wu every year.
I asked for the address, took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba to the entrance of the game arcade, and then walked straight in.
The game arcade was chaotic inside, with many young men playing games and some swearing. I gave Zhao Yuejin a wink, and Zhao Yuejin understood what I meant. He picked up a stool nearby and smashed it at the game machine in front of him. With one fell swoop, the game machine was smashed to pieces, startling a young man with yellow hair who was playing the game. He was smoking a cigarette and pointed directly at Zhao Yuejin, yelling, "What the fuck are you doing? I'm playing here."
I walked over and kicked the yellow hair to the ground with one kick. Scream at your mother.
I kicked the yellow hair to the ground and then shouted at the punks in the game room, "I'm here to cause trouble for Di Wu today.
If you don't want to die, get the hell out of here."
The group of punks looked at the three of us, a little dazed, because over the years, no one in the south of the city had dared to cause trouble for Di Wu, let alone the fact that there were only 3 of us today.
Chapter 111, You'll Pay the Price. As a thug, the best thing you can be is a bully.
There were more than a dozen punks in the room, and there were only 3 of us, so even though my words were very tough, they didn't intimidate them at all. A group of punks stared at us without the slightest bit of fear, and even a few of them walked over, looking eager to try something.
Fuck you. Who do you think you are? Do you know whose place this is? You don't want to live anymore.
A young guy with a flat top walked over with an arrogant look on his face.
Isn't this Di Wu's place?
I came here today to trash his place. Zhao Yuejin stroked his greasy long hair parted down the middle, looking even more arrogant than the guy with the flat top.
The guy with the flat top was suddenly made to laugh by Zhao Yuejin. Where did you 3 bullies come from? How dare you come here and trash Brother Yu's place? Aren't you afraid of dying here? Fuck, you're full of shit.
Zhao Yuejin picked up a stool and smashed it at Zhao Ping's head.
Zhao Ping was arrogant and didn't guard against Zhao Yuejin's sudden attack at all.
The stool he threw was knocked over and a bloody hole was smashed in his head. Zhao Ping was really angry this time, stood up with his hand on his forehead, and shouted, "Go, waste these sons of bitches for me."
At Zhao Ping's order, the thugs in the game room rushed towards us. It's urgent, let's go. As soon as he saw people coming, Zhao Yuejin shrunk his neck and crouched down, hiding behind Yi Yuanba.
After all, Zhao Yuejin's best skills were to shoot his mouth off and do dirty tricks, plus an ability to resist beatings that defied the heavens.
As for getting into a fight with someone, he would either be the one hitting or the one getting hit.
A small thug rushed up to Yi Yuanba, holding a steel pipe in his hand, and smashed it down on Yi Yuanba's head.
Yi Yuanba didn't even move, and he was sent flying with a single kick.
The speed of his kick was much faster than the thug's steel pipe, and before the thug's steel pipe reached his head, the entire person was kicked flying. The powerful kick sent the thug flying, and he smashed into the body of his accomplice behind him, knocking the latter down. The few thugs scrambled to their feet and tried to charge forward again. Yi Yuanba would not give them the chance, and with a flash of movement, he charged into the group of thugs, kicking and punching. After a few rounds, all the thugs in the game room were sent equals to the ground. I glanced at the small flat top whose head had just been smashed by Zhao Yuejin, and walked towards him. The small flat top had already been scared by Yi Yuanba's fierce fighting skills, his face was pale, and his legs were shaking. "Who are you guys? This is De Wu's territory, and if you cause trouble here, De Wu won't let you off." Although the small flat top was scared, he still tried to hold on. "De Wu? I came here today to cause trouble for him. I'll give him a call and ask him to come here." I pulled over a stool and sat down, and said to the small flat top, "I just called Brother De Wu, and he'll be here in a while." The small flat top was honest, and he told me directly. "That's good, then I'll wait here for him to come," I said with a smile. "I came here today to deal with De Wu. If he doesn't show up, then I've come for nothing." The punks on the floor all got up, but they were already scared by Yi Yuanba, so they didn't dare to escape and all huddled in the corner, shivering. In a moment, I saw a group of people across the street through the game room window. There were 20 or 30 of them, murderous and menacing, walking towards the game room. The leader was De Wu. De Wu pushed open the game room door and saw the mess inside, and he immediately became furious. "Who the hell dares to cause trouble in my place?" De Wu looked up and saw me. "It's you, you're the one who trashed my place. Brother De Wu, I haven't seen you in a few days, and you're looking even more energetic." I smiled and said hello to De Wu. "Chong'an, why are you here? Did you trash my place?" De Wu didn't even bother to be polite, staring at me angrily. "Yes, I smashed your place," I told him. "Fuck you, Chen, you dare to smash my place, you're looking for death." De Wu suddenly became angry. "I want to ask you something. Today at the furniture store, did you beat my men?" I asked De Wu. "What, you mean Meng Chong? That guy used to offend me. Now that he dares to come to Chong'an, of course I have to fix him." De Wu looked at me and sneered. "Fuck you, it really was you, daring to touch my people. Do you know what will happen to you?" Knowing that it was him who had injured Meng Chong and Chen Liang, a murderous intent arose in my heart. "Chen, you little brat, don't be arrogant in front of me, you are not qualified enough." De Wu looked condescending. He was the most powerful boss in the south of the city, and I was just a newcomer, so of course he wouldn't take me seriously. "De Wu, I originally respected you when I came to Chang'an. After all, you are the boss of the underworld, but you actually dared to beat my people. I won't let you off today," I said to De Wu in a deep voice. "If you won't let me off, what can you do? I'm telling you, if you dare to make trouble here today, don't even think about walking out." De Wu's face was gloomy. "It's not certain who won't be able to walk out in a while." I sneered and gave Zhao Yuejin a wink. Zhao Yuejin immediately understood what I meant, and picked up a stool and smashed it towards the few remaining undamaged game consoles. "Fuck, you're looking for death, kill them for me." De Wu's eyes immediately turned red, and he shouted at his subordinates, who rushed towards us. Yi Yuanba flashed, joining the battle, and I also kicked the small flat top in front of me into the air, picked up a stool and charged into the middle of the thugs. In the future, I will also be someone who hangs out on the streets, so I must be proficient at beating people up. After all, if you hang out on the streets, you must be proficient at your trade, otherwise you will be the one getting beaten up instead of beating others. Yi Yuanba is a master and a ready-made teacher, so I have been learning a few tricks from him whenever I have time. Yi Yuanba says that I have a good understanding and learn things quickly. So I have long wanted to try my skills. I charged into the fray with a stool in hand and used the moves Yi Yuanba taught me to deal with these thugs. Surprisingly, it worked like a charm, and in the blink of an eye, I had knocked a few of the thugs to the ground. Yi Yuanba was even faster than me, and before I finished, the thugs surrounding him were all on the ground. I picked up the stool and smashed the last thug in front of me, then looked up at De Wu with a cold smile. Chapter 112, Mutual Face. Seeing that all his men were defeated in the blink of an eye, De Wu was also dumbfounded. He never imagined that our fighting power would be so strong. Of course, the fighting power of Zhao Yuejin and I compared to Yi Yuanba is negligible. What? What do you want? Seeing me walk over, De Wu was really scared and involuntarily took a few steps back. De Wu, you hit my men, you should know what I want to do, I said to him with a smile. If you dare to touch me, this is Songnam. If you touch me, do you think you can still hang around in Songnam? Daewoo shouted. I smiled a little, knowing that this big boss on Songnam Road was now really scared, and he was covering up his fear with his arrogance. Daewoo, we could have got along peacefully, and you should have had a share of that project, but now, you have touched my people, so none of this has anything to do with you anymore. I looked at Daewoo and said coldly, not only is all this none of your business, you will also have to pay the price. As I spoke, I picked up a broken table leg. Chong'an, you are just a newcomer from outside. Do you think that after you have offended me, you can still survive in this city? Daewoo was making a last-ditch attempt to fight back. Don't worry about that. If I dare to come here, it is because I am capable of doing so. In the future, if anyone still refuses to submit, I will beat them until they do. I finished speaking and stopped talking nonsense with Daewoo. I directly picked up the leg of a stool and smashed it over his head. He had beaten Meng Chong so badly, and today I would make him pay back double. In just one blow, blood came out of Daewoo's head. He covered his head and looked at me with a face of disbelief, as if he couldn't believe that I actually dared to hit him. I know what he was thinking. This guy has been arrogant in the south of the city for more than 10 years, and no one has dared to touch him. I actually dared to beat him today, which made him a little difficult to accept for a while. I tell you, no matter who you are, Daewoo, if you touch my people, you won't be able to do it. And, in the future, if I find out that you are giving me any trouble in this city, I will come and beat you myself. After I finished speaking, I glanced at Yi Yuanba. Yi Yuanba stepped forward and quickly kicked Daewoo in both legs. Crack, crack. Accompanied by two ear-splitting bone-snapping sounds, Daewoo let out a scream and fell to the ground, unconscious. Both of his legs were broken. Seeing that we actually dared to break Daewoo's legs, the group of thugs all widened their eyes, not daring to breathe loudly for fear of angering Yi Yuanba, the god of killing. Tell Daewoo that if he dares to oppose me in the future, I will break his legs again. I said to Daewoo's men, and then walked out with Yi Yuanba and Zhao Yuejin. Chang'an, I'm really happy today. I don't think that bastard Daewoo will dare to mess with us again. We'll definitely win the project in Chong'an. As we walked out the door, Zhao Yuejin stroked his hair with his hand, looking heroic and saying with great enthusiasm. I nodded. Daewoo is the most powerful force in Chong'an. I believe that within an hour, the news that Daewoo was taken care of by me will spread throughout the entire city. I even dare to fix Daewoo. Those guys will have to think twice when facing me. Tell the big guys, I'm inviting everyone in Chong'an to Huajin restaurant today, please come. I said to Zhao Yuejin. Zhao Yuejin nodded and grinned. This time I'll see if those brats still dare to be arrogant with us. Last night at Zhao Sihai's banquet, these Chong'an bigwigs followed Daewoo and didn't give me any face, they just turned around and left. Now that their boss Daewoo has been dealt with by me, I'll see who else doesn't show up today. That evening, at the Huajin Hotel. The reservation was for 7 o'clock, but Zhao Yuejin, Yi Yuanba and I didn't arrive downstairs until 8 o'clock. It wasn't because we were delayed by something, but I was deliberately late. Now I'm holding the demolition project for that area in my hands, and I've dealt with Daewoo. As long as these big bosses in the city south have any brains, they should know that they can only make money by doing business with me. So now they are the ones who need me. And the first thing to do when dealing with these people is to suppress their arrogance. If anyone leaves without my permission, then this project will have nothing to do with them in the future. Only by obediently waiting for me can they get any benefits. We walked to the door of the private room, and Zhao Yuejin took the lead, pushing open the door and shouting inside, Brother Chang'an is here. I felt a little embarrassed by him. This guy's voice was like that of an eunuch shouting for the emperor to get up and leave. But this was not the time to say anything else, so I suppressed the embarrassment in my heart and walked in. None of the big shots in the room seemed embarrassed, and when they saw me come in, they all stood up with a loud clatter. Brother Chang'an is here. Hello, Brother Chang'an. All the big shots greeted me with big smiles. I glanced around and saw that, apart from Daewoo, who should be in the hospital, there were just as many people here today as there were yesterday. This made me quite satisfied. It seems that these people are all people who know how to adapt to circumstances. After all, for these thugs, the most important thing about being a gangster is profit. Now that I can give them profit and I can also suppress them with my strength, of course they won't dare to have any complaints. If there is any foolhardy young man among these guys, it would still be a problem for me. Hello everyone, I never thought that everyone would actually give me face and come together like this. I smiled and greeted them. Brother Chang'an is hosting, who dares not give face? Yes, everyone still has to eat with Brother Chang'an in the future, who dares not come? Everyone hurriedly exchanged pleasantries with me. I sneered inwardly, knowing that if I hadn't taken care of Diwu today, I was afraid that none of these guys would give me face tonight. People, after all, seek to avoid harm and seek benefits, and it's unavoidable. They are all local snakes in Chang'an, and without their help, I simply couldn't have handled the demolition of that old residential area. And without me, they wouldn't have been able to get anything out of this project. So now they and I are taking advantage of our relationship, except that I'm the one calling the shots. Everyone, thank you for giving me face today. You are all my seniors in the Tao. Since you are giving me face, I will of course give you face as well. Let's make money together. In the future, I, Chen Chang'an, will develop this project with you all, and we will get rich together. As I said this, I raised a glass of wine, and the crowd quickly raised their glasses as well, shouting, "Bottoms up." Chapter 113, The Brave General Picks Up the Pulley. We had a great time drinking and chatting. These bigwigs from Chang'an, who had followed Duga the day before and wanted to deal with me together, seemed to have suddenly suffered from amnesia today and had completely forgotten about what happened yesterday. Everyone sat together, like brothers who had met too late, talking with all their hearts and calling each other brother. When the show ended, each of these people expressed their loyalty to me, saying that I could rest assured that in the future, they would absolutely follow my lead in the south of the city, and that anyone who disrespected me would be disrespecting them as well. After sending these people away, Zhao Yuejin, Yi Yuanba and I did not rush back, but sat in the private room and reviewed the events of the day. Of course, it was basically just Zhao Yuejin and I talking, and Yi Yuanba wasn't interested in this kind of thing at all. And, after this, we'll be completely established in Chang'an, Zhao Yuejin said, taking the bottle and pouring himself a drink. He took a sip and said proudly, "I've got a few things up my sleeve, too." I nodded with a smile. I was quite satisfied with today's gains. First, I dealt with the most stubborn one, Diwu, and shaken the others up. And tonight, I'd even formed an alliance with them. This relationship is a binding of interests, and there is nothing more stable than a relationship of mutual interests. They can make money with me, so if someone comes out against me now, they will be the first to disagree. Even if Diwu doesn't agree, he will definitely not dare to stab me in the back again in the future. Now if he attacks me, it will be equivalent to offending the big brothers on the entire Chang'an road. Diwu doesn't have the guts. There are two best methods for dealing with these thugs, one is to give them benefits, and the other is to make them afraid of you. Now I want to stay in Chang'an and need these punks' help, so I have to make them fear us and give them benefits to make them work for me. I understand the principle of giving a reward after a punishment. Make them afraid and they will be in awe, give them benefits and they will obey orders. This is probably the way to control people. Now I can see that you are becoming more and more like a boss. I, Zhao Yuejin, really did not misjudge anyone. Following Ong is the wisest choice I have ever made. Zhao Yuejin took another sip of wine and said drunkenly, "Today, I opened up the situation in the south of the city, and I drank a bit too much. I had a few more drinks with Zhao Yuejin before I got drunk and paid the bill." Zhao Yuejin and I supported each other, Yi Yuanba followed behind, and we walked out of the hotel one after the other. Once we were outside the door, I picked up my phone and tried to hail a cab. I had only taken over the bar not long ago, and the profits were not that great, so I hadn't bought a car during this period of time, and I usually took a taxi when I went out. However, I now had the 5 million that Zhu Zhe had given me, and tomorrow the company would complete the paperwork, and Zhao Sihai would put another 5 million into the account, which would amount to an instant increase of 10 million. And I live far from the city center, so it's time to think about buying a car. Just as I picked up my phone, a yellow car appeared at the intersection ahead. It was a taxi, and I could see that its empty sign was on, and it was heading straight for us. Seeing the taxi, I put away my phone and waved at it. I felt dizzy as soon as I moved my head, and I couldn't help but stagger a few steps. Just then, I suddenly realized that something was wrong. The taxi was driving straight towards us, and it was speeding up, as if it had no intention of stopping. Oh no! Seeing this, I broke out in a cold sweat and sobered up considerably. This car is clearly coming right at me. The car was speeding, and I was drunk and a little slow to react, so I didn't react immediately. Zhao Yuejin next to me was in the same situation as me, just staring wide-eyed at the taxi that was heading straight for us, not even knowing how to avoid it. At that moment, Yi Yuanba, who had been following us, moved. I saw him make a flash and arrive at the entrance of the hotel. The hotel's main entrance was under renovation, with scaffolding and steel pipes propping it up. Yi Yuanba rushed up and kicked one of the steel pipes. In a terrifying sound, the steel wire rope binding the steel pipe was directly kicked apart by him. Yi Yuanba picked up a steel pipe more than 3 meters long and stood in front of us. At this time, the car had also rushed up to within 4 or 5 meters of us. Yi Yuanba stood in front of us, not moving a muscle, and just placed the other end of the steel pole on the ground. The next moment, the taxi rushed over, and the undercarriage crushed the steel pole as it sped forward. At the same time, Yi Yuanba roared, his muscles bulging, actually tearing his shirt. The other end of the steel pipe had already been crushed by the taxi, but Yi Yuanba flipped his hands up, and actually managed to hold the steel pipe up. At the same time, there was a muffled sound from his feet, and both of his shoes were completely torn, and even his pants were torn in several places. The speeding taxi was actually held up by a steel pipe. The driver kept accelerating, trying to rush forward, but the front of the car had already been lifted off the ground by Yi Yuanba with the steel pipe, so it could not move forward at all. The driver in the car rushed twice, knowing that he could not get through at all, so he immediately put it in reverse gear, plus moved the accelerator, and prepared to back up. At the same time, Yi Yuanba roared again, his stance like a mountain, and he forced his arms, tearing the clothes on his arms into rags with the terrifying force within him. The next moment, Yi Yuanba flipped his hands, and the taxi, which was about to back up, actually flipped over under his terrifying force. The next moment, Yi Yuanba's steel pipe in his hands was like a spear, and with a sharp flick, the car flipped directly over. In desperation, the driver in the car shifted into forward gear again and slammed on the gas. At this time, the overturned car body sped forward rapidly, and then with a loud bang, it slammed into a large tree in front of it. These scenes happened so quickly that I didn't have time to think. I didn't react until the car hit the tree and stopped moving. But the first thing I reacted to was not the fear that I had almost been killed, but looking at Yi Yuanba. I saw that he was now facing away from me, and his spear was like a spear in his hands. His arms, back, pants on his legs, and shoes on his feet had almost become strips of cloth at this time. It was him who had just jumped over a car with one spear by himself. How did he do it? Yi Yuanba, as expected, lived up to his name and was truly a fierce general. Chapter 114, Who Threw the First Punch? The Peking Opera, the complete biography of Yu Fei, has a scene in which Yu Fei and Jin Wuzhu fight a battle on Bullhead Mountain. Yu Fei's subordinate Gao Chong uses a spear to knock over Jin Wuzhu's pulley, which weighs more than 1,000 catties, one after the other. In the end, Gao Chong is crushed to death by the 12th pulley. The story of Gao Chong is one of the most exciting parts of the legend of Yu Fei. Gao Chong is a peerless warrior, and with just one spear in his hand, he can lift a 1,000 Jin weight pulley. When I was a child, I listened to Peking Opera, and this was my favorite part. I never thought that I would one day witness this scene with my own eyes. Yi Yuanba just used a steel pipe to lift that taxi into the air. That taxi was coming at full speed, and the impact must have been more than 1,000 pounds. How did Yi Yuanba do it? Brother Yi, are you okay? I couldn't help but ask this general-like figure as I looked at the back of Yi Yuanba's head. Yi Yuanba turned around, and his face looked a little pale in the light. I could clearly see that his hands were bloody, and both of his tiger's mouths had cracked. It seems that although he just picked up the car with one shot and sent it flying, he himself paid a heavy price. My biggest concern now is whether he is hurt. Today's assassination was so sudden that we were completely unprepared. If Yi Yuanba hadn't been there today, I would have probably not survived. Thinking about this, I broke out in a cold sweat, and my gratitude for Yi Yuanba increased even more. I'm fine, let's see if the person is still alive. Yi Yuanba coughed and said to us. Zhao Wujin came back to his senses, rushed to the front of the taxi, kicked the glass open, and stuck his head in to check. A moment later, Zhao Wujin came over, shook his head at Yi Yuanba and me, and said, "The person hit his head and is dead." He was a man in his 40s, I've never seen him before. I nodded when I heard what Yi Yuanba said. Since the person was already dead, there was of course nothing more to ask. The most important thing now was to get out of here quickly. I went up to Yi Yuanba and helped him. Although he had just done something outrageous, picking up a car with one shot, I knew that he was not doing well. This strong man had been standing still the whole time, and I knew that he must have been injured. "Brother Yi, are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" I asked him while holding him up. "No, I just feel a little dizzy. I just need to rest for a while." Yi Yuanba gave me a grin, and I saw that there was blood on his teeth. Seeing their appearance, I felt even more guilty and distressed.
I quickly beckoned Zhao Yuejin and helped Yi Yuanba back into the hotel. Today's assassination was obviously aimed at me, and the other party almost succeeded. He had accounted for everything except for the fact that I had a strong man like Yi Yuanba by my side. I was afraid that the other party still had other tricks up their sleeve, so it would be safer to go back to the hotel. Tonight, I simply decided not to go back, and I directly opened 2 rooms in the hotel. One for Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba, and one for myself. Originally, I was going to stay with Yi Yuanba to take care of him, but Zhao Yuejin said he would be fine. I didn't insist. After all, the 2 of them were acquaintances before, a little more familiar than they were with me, and could talk about anything. After settling in, Zhao Yuejin went to the pharmacy and bought alcohol, disinfectant, and bandages. When he returned, Zhao Yuejin and I helped Yi Yuanba disinfect the wounds on his broken jaws. Yi Yuanba's 2 wounds on his mouth were very deep, a bit bloody and messy. One can imagine how terrifying the strength that erupted from his body was when he picked the car in the air. After dressing the wounds, Yi Yuanba, who was somewhat exhausted, lay on the bed and closed his eyes. I waved to Zhao Yuejin and walked outside. We stood at the end of the corridor and looked downstairs through the car window. The traffic police had already arrived and started dealing with the traffic accident. I had already seen when I returned to the hotel earlier that there were no surveillance cameras in that area. I knew that things would not be so coincidental, and that was precisely the reason why the person who wanted to get rid of me would make his move there. But this time it was a blessing in disguise for us. Without surveillance cameras, there would be a lot less trouble. If someone really saw Yi Yuanba pick up a car with just a steel pipe, it might cause some trouble. It was a close call, I said, taking out a cigarette and offering it to Zhao Yuejin. Zhao Yuejin took the cigarette, lit it, took a strong drag and nodded. They almost succeeded. Who do you think did it? I asked Zhao Yuejin. Zhao Yuejin frowned and thought for a moment, then said, Diwu is the most suspicious, but it's hard to say. I was silent and also lowered my head to think. Now that I've come to the south of the city and taken the most profitable project, the people who hate me the most should be these people in the south of the city. Diwu in particular. Not only did I take away his most profitable project, I also broke both his legs this morning. So no matter how you look at it, he is the most suspicious. As for the others, I already told them about the partnership in the evening, and as for the dividends, they are even more than what Diwu gave them. So no matter how you look at it, it seems that none of them will turn against me, let alone risk their lives to get rid of me. Thugs are in the business for their own interests, and no one will do anything that is detrimental to their own interests. But you can never tell. I thought I had them all figured out, but maybe one of them is on good terms with Diwu and doesn't take my threats seriously and is trying to get rid of me? But no matter how you look at it, Diwu is the prime suspect. At that moment, my phone suddenly rang. I froze when I saw the caller ID. It was Zhu Yeqing. I had been the one contacting her all this time, and she had never called me. What could she possibly want at this hour? Hello, President Zhu, how are you? I pretended to be calm and asked her, because I hadn't decided whether to tell him about what happened today. You're still alive? Zhu Yeqing's voice came from the other end. Although what she said sounded a bit cold, for some reason, I heard a hint of concern in her tone. I smiled wryly when I heard Zhu Yeqing's words, knowing that she had already gotten the news about my assassination attempt. This made me think more highly of Zhu Yeqing. She is a woman who stands at the top of Hangzhou and is almost unchallenged. She got the news so quickly. It had only been an hour or so since the incident here, and she already knew. But I don't find it strange. Zhu Yeqing has been able to stand in Hangzhou for several years, especially in her position, and naturally has an intelligence network that no one else knows about. Chapter 115, It's Too Late to Come. Thank you for your concern, President Zhu, I'm fine. I said to Zhu Yeqing. Zhu Yeqing on the phone was silent for a moment, and said lightly, It's good that you're fine, someone else is going to worry to death. The next moment, I heard Han Yi's voice coming from the other end, with a hint of panic in his tone, Chong'an, are you okay, are you hurt? Hearing Han Yi's voice full of concern, an inexplicable warmth rose in my heart. I could feel that this old classmate was genuinely concerned about me. Don't worry, I'm fine and I'm not hurt, you don't need to worry, I quickly said to Han Yi. It's good that you're fine, Chong'an, you must pay attention to safety in the future. Han Yi was still a little worried. I quickly reassured her a few more times, which made Han Yi stop worrying. Zhu Yeqing on the other side took the phone again and asked me, who do you think did it? It should be Diwu. I thought about it for a moment and said directly. Well, it's him, and it can only be him.
You're a smart person, so don't think too much about some things.
It's not good for anyone if you do. Zhu Yeqing was silent for a moment, and then said to me. Thanks for reminding me, Mr. Zhu. I understand these things, I said. Well, I'm glad you know. Anyway, after Di Wu did such a thing, no one can tolerate him anymore. You can take action tomorrow and get rid of him from Chong'an. Zhu Yeqing said.
I knew what Zhu Yeqing meant. After all, I was the one Chang Bo had designated to be in charge of the demolition project in Chong'an. You can compete with Di Wu openly, and even secretly play some tricks, and Chang Bo won't care.
If I can beat Di Wu, then I can take over the project. If I can't beat him, then it means I'm not capable and I can't handle the project, so I'll just have to go away.
But today is different. Today, Di Wu wants to kill me, which is breaking the rules in the game.
Even Chang Bo won't tolerate him anymore. Zhu Yeqing's point is clear.
If I go to Di Wu's trouble tomorrow, no one will help him, and I can completely get him out of the city. But why Di Wu has the guts to kill me is something only he knows best. Who told him what, or who asked him to do it, I can only find out when I meet Di Wu.
But one thing is certain, Di Wu's influence in Chong'an will be completely eliminated tomorrow, and all of Di Wu's establishments will become mine.
Of course, although I am greedy, I still know the rules when it comes to getting ahead in the world.
There are so many people watching in Chong'an.
Di Wu has a lot of places, and I can't possibly eat them all by myself, leaving no one else to have a taste.
So as for how Di Wu's territory should be divided, that's a problem I need to consider later. Since you'll be fine this time, you should be safe for a while.
During this time, get the construction project in Chong'an done well, and you'll have a place in Hangzhou in the future.
Xu Qingyan said lightly. I know, President Zhu.
I said respectfully.
That's enough, I'm tired, that's it. Zhu Yeqing hung up the phone.
The call just now was not very long, but Zhu Yeqing and I had reached a consensus, and that was that we both believed that the murderer was Di Wu. Because under the current circumstances, the only person who couldn't dare to do this to me seems to be him. As for whether he wanted to do it or someone told him to do it, it doesn't matter anymore. Because I didn't die this time, no one will move against me again in the short term, unless I really threaten someone's vital interests. Just as Zhu Qing's phone call had just ended, my phone rang again. I picked up the phone and looked at the number, and it turned out to be Chang Bo calling.
I quickly answered the phone. Hello, Chang Bo, I didn't expect you to call this late. You had such a big accident, how could I sleep? I just got the news and called you right away. Are you okay?
I could feel Chang Bo's concern in his tone.
Thank you, Chang Bo, for your concern. I'm lucky to be alive this time. I'm fine, I said to Chang Bo with a smile.
Damn Di Wu, he really has some nerve, how dare he touch you?
It seems that he can't stay in this city anymore. Chang Bo was very angry, and he actually let out an expletive, which was rare.
But that wasn't the most important thing.
The most important thing was that he said Di Wu couldn't stay in the city anymore, which would cut off Di Wu's livelihood in the city.
With Chang Bo's words, no matter if Di Wu wants to or not, he can't survive in Chong'an anymore. Chang'an, don't worry, I will definitely give you an answer on this matter. In the future, Di Wu will get the hell out of Chong'an, and as for what to do with his territory, you are in charge.
Chang Bo said without any courtesy.
I didn't exchange any pleasantries with Chang Bo. This time, Di Wu almost killed me, and in the end, I survived. He is the loser, and I am the victor, so these things are originally what I should get.
Okay, it's getting late, you get some rest, I'll take care of the rest. Chang Bo said again.
Thank you, Chang Bo, for your care, I will definitely handle the demolition properly.
I said to Chang Bo.
Since I have given you this project, I naturally believe in your abilities, do a good job, and when you finish this project, I will personally pour you a glass of wine to celebrate.
Chang Bo laughed heartily and said.
I exchanged a few more polite words with Chang Bo, then hung up the phone, but I didn't put it in my pocket, I held it in my hand.
Zhao Yuejin glanced at me and smiled. He was a smart man and of course knew what I was waiting for.
Zhu Yeqing and Chang Bo had both called, so the call from the other person should be coming soon.
Sure enough, less than 2 minutes later, my phone lit up and Zhao Sihai's call came through. Brother Zhao, you timed this pretty well.
I said with a smile as I answered the call. Humph, you're a popular guy right now with Zhu Yeqing and Chang Bo, and I know all the news. They definitely knew the news before me, so they must have called sooner than me. I'm just waiting for them to finish talking to you before I call, Zhao Sihai said. I now truly admire Zhao Sihai. He is truly a very clever person, and it is a blessing to have such a person as an ally. It's a good thing you're fine this time, and since you're fine, you'll be completely settled in Chong'an Station in the future. Zhao Sihai didn't say anything more than that, and spoke directly to me. I gave a small nod. Do you really think Diwu was behind this? Zhao Sihai asked me after a moment of thought. It seems like it could only be him, I said with a bitter smile. Yes, it can only be him. Everyone thinks it must be him, but only that idiot Diwu knows if he really did it. Zhao Sihai said with a cold smile. What do you mean, brother Zhao? I asked Zhao Sihai tentatively. What I mean is, if you want to find out if it was really Diwu who wanted to get you, you should go to the hospital and ask him face to face now, before it's too late. Zhao Sihai said. Chapter 116 Diwu is dead. Hearing Zhao Sihai's words, I suddenly had a start and thought of an important issue. No matter who it is, everyone will see Diwu as the one who attacked me this time. Just now when Zhu Yeqing called me, there seemed to be a trace of doubt in his tone. However, Zhu Yeqing's final meaning was very clear. Whether Diwu was being used or taking the blame, it doesn't matter. What's important is that I'm not dead now and I'll be able to get a lot of benefits. And now Zhao Sihai's meaning is very clear. He has already determined that Diwu, that idiot, is the one taking the blame, and the person who moved against me is not him at all. And now I want to know who really wants me dead, and I can only find out by asking Diwu. There was another meaning in Zhao Sihai's words, and that was that he guessed Diwu would hardly survive the night. Which hospital is Diwu staying at? I asked Zhao Sihai without hesitation. I knew you couldn't resist, so I already found out where he is. The First People's Hospital of Chong'an, Department of Surgery, Ward 45, Single Room 45. Zhao Sihai gave me Diwu's address. Thanks, Zhao, I'll be right there. I told Zhao Sihai. Be careful, I think the people who want to get rid of Diwu are about to make their move. Zhao Sihai warned me. I know what I'm doing. I hung up the phone and glanced at Zhao Yuejin. Zhao Yuejin nodded at me. His meaning was clear, he also wanted to go to the hospital. I took out my phone and called a taxi, then went to the door with Zhao Yuejin and waited. We didn't tell Yi Yuanba. He was exhausted today and needed to rest, and going to the hospital was just to ask Diwu some things, so there was no need for fighting, so we didn't tell him. Zhao Yuejin and I took a taxi and went directly to the hospital, heading straight for the Department of Surgery. Just as we arrived at the door of the surgery, we heard a flurry of activity in the corridor. Nurses and doctors rushed into the emergency room, pushing a gurney and shouting. I glanced at the person lying on the gurney and was shocked to see that it was Diwu. However, he was pale, his eyes were wide open, his mouth was open, and he looked lifeless. He was clearly dead. The nurse looked at me and said anxiously, "Are you a family member?" The patient suddenly had a heart attack for no apparent reason and is already dead. A heart attack. I let go of the nurse's arm and took 2 steps back, feeling a chill in my back. Zhao Sihai was right. Diwu was the one who took the blame and was the scapegoat. Now that I'm not dead, then he must be the one who died. I just didn't expect that person to be so ruthless and take Diwu's life so quickly. Hey, are you the patient's family or not? The nurse asked me anxiously. No, I was just asking casually. I smiled at the nurse. The nurse glared at me impatiently. What kind of person are you, causing trouble at a time like this? She said, and hurriedly walked out. Zhao Yuejin and I looked at each other, and then walked out. We didn't hurry back, but sat by the artificial lake in the hospital and lit a cigarette and smoked it. It seems that someone in Hangzhou really wants to get rid of you. Zhao Yuejin exhaled a puff of smoke and frowned, saying. Who do you think wants to get rid of me? I asked him. Zhao Yuejin shook his head and said, we don't know these big shots in Hangzhou well, let alone offend anyone. I really can't figure out who wants you dead. Do you think it might be Chang Bo? I stared at Zhao Yuejin and asked him. Zhao Yuejin's eyes flickered for a moment, as if he had thought of something, but he quickly shook his head and said, if it was him, it doesn't make sense. I nodded. In fact, I had long wondered if Chang Bo was behind this. But no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't figure it out. If Chang Bo wanted to deal with me, he could have done it in many ways cleanly with his strength. There was no need to go to such lengths, and there was no need to give me the project in the south of the city.
Giving me the project in the south of the city and then getting rid of me afterwards doesn't make sense. The enemy is in the dark, and we are in the light. Now we can
only take things one step at a time, but I believe that no matter how cunning the prey is, it will eventually show its true colors,
Zhao Yuejin said.
After that, he took a puff of smoke and said with some enthusiasm, "Ange, no matter what, now that Du is dead, the resistance we have in Chong'an is gone.
Next, we not only have to complete this project, but also to take over his territory. This is a few opportunities for us."
I nodded, knowing that Zhao Yuejin was right.
Diwu's death would indeed bring me wealth and power.
The saying that fortune and danger go hand in hand is really not false at all.
Today, let's do a tally of how many establishments Diwu has in the south of the city.
Tomorrow morning, notify these guys in the south of the city that there will be a meeting at the hotel. After I finished speaking, I returned to the hotel with Zhao Yuejin. We hardly slept at all that night, tallying up all of Diwu's establishments in the south of the city.
Diwu is indeed the boss of the South City underworld. He has quite a few establishments under his name: a nightclub, 2 bars, 2 game arcades, and an underground casino.
These establishments bring Diwu a lot of cash every day, which is why he is the boss of the South City underworld.
But now that Diwu is dead, all these establishments will be mine. Diwu has quite a few establishments, and we want to take them all?
Zhao Yuejin asked me with red eyes, a little excited. We don't have enough manpower to take over all of them, and if we do, it will make others jealous. We should give some of these places away so that others can have a share of the profits, I said. Zhao Yuejin took a painful breath after hearing my words. He is a smart man and of course knows that what I said is correct, but he still feels a little heartbroken at the thought of giving away all these places. After all, in Zhao Yuejin's eyes, these establishments are all chickens that only lay golden eggs.
How can he not feel pain? Baisheng Casino, we will keep this one, and in the future, this place will be ours.
I pointed to the Baisheng Casino in my notebook. This is one of Diwu's biggest establishments, and it is also the most profitable one. I must take this into my hands.
Chapter 117, My Territory.
In the morning, the big bosses in the south of the city all came to the hotel. As the local snakeheads in the south of the city, they were already aware of what happened last night, so the way these guys looked at me today was a bit strange. Someone tried to kill me last night, but now I'm alive and Diwu is dead for no apparent reason. This result surprised and scared each of them, and they became more respectful towards me. I was very satisfied with their performance. When you're in the underworld, you need to have an air of authority, especially when dealing with these thugs.
They will only respect you if you can overwhelm them with your authority. And now, they're all afraid of me. Alright everyone, I believe you all know what happened last night.
I smiled and looked around. These unruly big shots on Chong'an Road immediately nodded with a smile in their eyes when they saw me, not daring to be the least bit negligent.
Diwu is dead. You all know about it, right?
After I finished speaking, the room suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at me, and I looked at them, but no one spoke first. Diwu had been in the underworld for 20 years, and I never thought he would go so soon. He had a bad heart before, but I never thought it would be so sudden. What a pity. At this time, one person spoke, his tone tinged with a hint of regret. I glanced at him and knew his name, Zhao Guazi, a major figure in the south of the city. Yes, I heard that Diyu had a heart condition before, and I even told him to get some quick-acting heart pills ready.
Heart disease is a fast-acting disease, and it's a pity about Diyu.
With Zhao Guazi taking the lead, the group of big shots pretended to understand but pretended not to, and began to regret Diyu's death. Of course, the cause of death must be heart disease. I glanced at Zhao Guazi and nodded at him with a smile.
He's a smart man, and I like dealing with smart people.
Well, although it's a pity, Dawu is dead, but what do you think we should do with the places under Dawu's control?
I asked with a smile.
As soon as I said this, everyone stopped. After all, this was about their own interests, and it was the real reason they had come here today.
Hey, what do we have to say?
After all, Ngu is in charge of the whole of Chong'an, so whatever you say goes. Zhao Guazi was the first to speak again, and as soon as he had finished speaking, everyone else immediately agreed. I like Zhao Guazi more and more the longer I look at him. Having such a smart man around saves me a lot of trouble.
You are all veterans of the South City underworld, and I am a newcomer.
I dare not compete with you for anything. As for Dawu's territory, I will only take the Baisheng Casino. You can discuss among yourselves how to divide the rest. Hearing that I will only take the Baisheng casino, the bosses became excited again. Diwu had quite a few establishments. Usually, Diwu held on to these establishments, and no one could get any benefits from him. Now that I'm giving them to him, it's like getting benefits for no reason. Everyone immediately started arguing heatedly, while I took out a cigarette and quietly watched the scene in front of me. This scene was a bit absurd. Diwu had just died last night, and we were already discussing how to divide his territory. Many of these people used to be Diwu's sworn brothers, but now they were arguing with each other to get more benefits, and no one cared about Diwu's life or death. But I knew that this was reality. When someone died, they were gone and nothing was left, while the living people would always only care about their own interests. Although some of them used to be sworn brothers with Diwu, no one cared about that anymore. Getting more benefits was the top priority. After arguing for about half an hour, the group finally sorted things out. I glanced at them and said, now that everything is clear, I hope there won't be any more conflicts over this matter in the future. If anyone disagrees, they can come to me. No, the brothers have discussed it thoroughly and there will definitely be no more problems in the future. The group of big shots hurriedly nodded and said to me, that's good. There's one more thing you should remember. I heard that Diyu still has a wife and child. In the future, set aside a share of the profits from all the venues for them. Diyu is gone, and we can't let people say that we're bullying orphans and widows, remember? I said indifferently. Remembered, in the future, the brothers will definitely follow suit. Immediately, someone nodded in agreement. You are such a good person, and you are still thinking about Diwu's wife and child. You are truly righteous and generous. From now on, I will follow you around, and go. Zhao Guozi was so excited that he turned red. I glanced at Zhao Guozi and no matter how I thought about it, what this guy said sounded a bit off. What do you mean I'm still thinking about Diwu's wife and child? How can you say that? My good impression of this Zhao Guozi guy immediately took a hit. Since they had already split up, I took Zhao Yuejin and Yi Yuanba and left the hotel, hailed a taxi and went straight to the Baisheng casino. When we arrived at the casino, it wasn't open yet, and a few waiters were idly chatting at the bar. When they saw us come in, someone waved at us and said, sorry, it's not open today, you can go to another place. I knew that the waiters had also heard about Diwu's death. Now that the place was like no man's land, naturally no one cared about keeping it open. Get everyone in the place out here, I have something to say. I said to the waiters. Who the fuck do you think you are, didn't you hear we're closed? One of the waiters, who had a short temper, came over to me cursing. Fuck you, who are you talking to? Zhao Yuejin jumped over and slapped the waiter in the face. How dare you hit me? The waiter, who had been slapped, suddenly became angry. He picked up a stool and was about to fight, and the other few people, seeing their own people suffer, also quickly gathered around. Stay calm, do you know who he is? Although surrounded by several people, Zhao Yuejin was not afraid at all, pointing at me and saying. Several waiters looked up and down at me a few times and said to Zhao Yuejin, I don't give a damn who he is, he dares to hit our people, and today you will leave lying down. Seeing that they were about to start again, I coughed, took a step forward, and said to the waiters, my name is Chong'an, and from now on, this place is mine. If you don't want to get the hell out, just put everything down. Chong'an, you are Chong'an. Hearing me announce my name, the waiters froze for a moment, and then hurriedly put down the things in their hands. Chapter 118, Casino of Profiteering. I was very satisfied with the reaction of these people. It seems that they have all heard of my name. Yesterday, Diwu offended me and I broke his leg. This news spread throughout the entire city in one day, and coupled with Diwu's sudden death that night, these people under Diwu's command have heard of my name even more. So when they heard me announce my name, they were really scared. Brotherin, it turns out you are Brotherin, we didn't recognize you, please don't be angry. Several waiters were so scared that they didn't know what to do with their hands. Zhao Yuejin looked at their terrified faces with a smug expression. A person's name is like a tree's shadow. Now in this part of the city, my name is well established. Go, call everyone over, I have something to say. I said to the waiters. As soon as they heard my words, they immediately dispersed, and soon after, they had called everyone over. This casino in Diwu was not small, and there were nearly 30 waiters and waitresses, male and female, combined. In addition to the lobby, there were also more than a dozen private rooms, and the games were quite complete. I stood in the lobby, Yi Yuanba standing behind me, and Zhao Yuejin standing next to me, looking like a dog relying on its master for protection.
I'm sure you've heard about Diwu. Although he's gone, this place will continue to operate. From now on, this will be my territory. If any of you don't want to stay, you can step forward now and I'll let him go, I said, glancing at them. Everyone bowed their heads, none of them left. This was also within my expectations. In the current economic situation, finding a job is almost impossible. Working in this casino is not tiring, and the salary is not low. Generally speaking, no one will leave of their own accord. Okay, since no one wants to leave, then you will work hard from now on. I'll be upfront. If you do a good job, you will be rewarded. But if anyone dares to trip me up behind my back, don't blame me for being rude. I finished, swept them with a glance, and loudly asked, "Have you all remembered?" Everyone immediately answered in unison, "Yes." "Okay, today we will do a handover, and tomorrow we will officially open for business," I said, nodding to Zhao Yuejin. "We have already discussed it, and we will hand over the casino to Zhao Yuejin. As for the Qingliang bar, I will temporarily leave it in the care of Meng Chong. After all, the place is already on the right track and there won't be anything wrong under normal circumstances. As for the accounting issues, let Zhao Yuejin work a little harder and just do the accounting every few days. Although I have a few people around me now, they are completely inadequate. Meng Chong is a roughneck, and he's okay with fighting and killing, but he can't do anything else. Lu Liang is after all a waiter by training, and there's still a lot for him to learn. As for Yi Yuanba, there's no need to even think about it. So when I decided to take over this casino, I thought about it and came to the conclusion that the only person I could trust to manage it was Zhao Yuejin. There was no other choice. After all, I had no one else around me, and it was at this moment that I truly realized the importance of talent. If you want to get ahead in this world, you need people who can fight, but you also need people who know how to manage. During the day, we stayed in the casino. Zhao Yuejin and the original accountant were doing the accounts, while I just walked around and found an office to sit in for the whole day. In the evening, Zhao Yuejin pushed open the door, looking exhausted. Despite his tired face, the excitement in his expression was impossible to hide. We're rich this time. This casino is really a golden goose. Zhao Yuejin took out the account book with a face full of excitement and began to show me the detailed income and expenditure of the casino. If you want to make money, a casino is the best business. This is the first time I've learned that this casino can actually make so much money. Baixing Casino is actually not very big, but its monthly income and expenditure are as high as several million, and I'm afraid the net income has already exceeded 1 million. Damn it, Ange, we've really hit the jackpot this time. Zhao Yuejin giggled stupidly with the account book in his hands. Can the accountant here stay? I glanced at Zhao Yuejin and asked him. The accountant in a casino is like the heart of the casino. This place used to be Diwu's territory. So of course the accountant here is someone Diwu trusts. With such a large daily turnover in the casino, I'm not at all confident about the accountant. He's Diwu's cousin and a smart guy who took the initiative to confess to me, Zhao Yuejin said. Diwu's cousin? I frowned. Now that there is no one on our side, it is not good to replace him. What I mean is to let him do it for now. I will keep an eye on him, and there shouldn't be any problems. We will replace him when we find the right candidate, Zhao Yuejin said. I nodded. The casino has such a large turnover, I don't want to delay business for even a day. We have to open for business tomorrow. It is simply too late to replace the accountant at this time. Besides, I can't find such a talent right now. Since Zhao Yuejin said they are keeping an eye on it, I believe he can do it. Zhao Yuejin is a person who, although he doesn't usually do anything serious, is very meticulous. I feel very at ease with him in charge of many things. In the evening, we had a drink. When we returned to the apartment, Mu Xiaowan was still awake. She heard us and opened the door. She stood in the doorway and looked at me. Yi Yuanba didn't say a word, just opened my door, walked in, and closed the door behind him. I shrugged my shoulders and walked with Mu Xiaowan into her room. She didn't come back last night. Where did she go? As soon as she entered the room, Mu Xiaowan looked me up and down, with a critical expression. Where else could I go, Auntie? I'm so busy. I casually took off my jacket and threw it at Mu Xiaowan. Mu Xiaowan took it with a disgusted look on her face and hung it on the hanger for me. Chong'an, you're becoming more and more comfortable around me. Mu Xiaowan snorted. We're already so familiar with each other, what's the point of being polite? I said to her with a smile. Don't interrupt, just tell me, where did you go last night?
Mu Xiaowan crossed her arms and glared at me.
I looked at Mu Xiaowan, and for a moment I actually felt a little dazed.
No matter how you look at this scene, it looks like a wife interrogating her husband who came home late.
Hey, I'm asking you a question, what are you daydreaming about?
Seeing that I wouldn't answer, Mu Xiaowan became even more angry.
No,
I was just looking at you because you're so beautiful, and I got a little distracted. I quickly said to Mu Xiaowan with a smile.
Don't think that I'll let you off just because you're flattering me.
Mu Xiaowan's face turned slightly red, but she still pretended to be angry.
Hurry up and tell me, where did you go yesterday? Last night a lot of things happened, first someone tried to kill me, and then Dawu was killed.
I looked at Mu Xiaowan and said to her.
Chapter 119 Arrange a Personal.
Hearing my words, Mu Xiaowan's expression on her face immediately became serious, and she said to me, tell me. I nodded and told her in detail what had happened last night. After listening to me, Mu Xiaowan frowned and didn't speak for a long time.
Why, can't you think of who moved against me? I asked her.
Mu Xiaowan shook her head, let out a long breath, and said, I can't think of anyone for the time being, but precisely because I can't think of anyone, everyone is a suspect.
I understood what Mu Xiaowan meant.
She was reminding me to be careful in the future, no matter who it was.
Dawu is dead. What are you going to do with his territory? Mu Xiaowan looked up at me and asked.
I smiled and told Mu Xiaowan that it had already been dealt with, and then told her about the distribution of the booty today.
Not bad, you're not doing too bad.
Under my tutelage, you're getting smarter and smarter.
Mu Xiaowan nodded with satisfaction.
I didn't argue because Mu Xiaowan was right. During this period of time, I have been with Mu Xiaowan all the time, going over the recent happenings with her every day. Very often, Mu Xiaowan's perspective and insights are much farther reaching and more thorough than mine. But that doesn't mean I'm not as smart as Mu Xiaowan, but rather because the two of us grew up in different environments.
Since meeting Mu Lianqing, I can be sure that Mu Xiaowan's identity is definitely not simple.
A young lady like her, who grew up in an environment like that of a large family, with the education and insight she has received, is simply not comparable to a bumpkin like me who is just getting started. These days, being with Mu Xiaowan has really allowed me to learn a lot. After chatting with Mu Xiaowan for a while, we went to sleep separately.
Early the next morning, I took Yi Yuanba straight to the Baixing casino.
Today is the first day of business after I took over the casino, and I had to be there. I left it in the hands of Zhao Yuejin, who stayed here last night. The reopening is just a normal business, after all, I took over the place from Dawu, so I can't make a big fuss about it. The casino has already started to fill up with guests, and Zhao Yuejin is busy running around. I, on the other hand, am taking Yi Yuanba for a stroll around the casino, checking out the details.
As I'm wandering around, my phone rings.
I pick it up and see that it's Chang Bo calling.
I quickly answered the phone and said to the phone, Chang Bo, what are your instructions?
Chang Bo on the phone side and then said, I didn't expect Dawu to die so suddenly.
I was going to let him give you an explanation. It's all in the past, Chang Bo. When someone dies, debts are erased.
Dawu is dead, so I don't care about him anymore. I said to Chang Bo with a smile. There was something strange about Dawu's death, and anyone who wasn't an idiot could see it. But since Chang Bo didn't want to talk about it, I certainly wouldn't bring it up. Dawu's death was very strange.
I've already asked someone to investigate, but there's no clue yet. If I find anything out, I'll let you know first.
Who knew that Chang Bo would bring it up when I didn't want to mention it? I froze for a moment. Chang Bo's words somewhat surprised me. The reason I didn't want to talk to Chang Bo about Dawu's death is because deep down I've always been on guard against him. I suspect that he had a hand in Dawu's death. So we should avoid this topic as much as possible. Who knew that Chang Bo would actually bring it up on his own initiative, which was a bit unexpected?
Could it be that I'm overthinking it and Chang Bo had nothing to do with it?
After Dawu's death, you handled it very well and made the arrangements properly.
I was right to have faith in you.
You have the bearing of a great general.
Chang Bo changed the subject. I understood what Chang Bo meant.
He was referring to the division of Dawu's business after his death. Although I was a bit greedy, I was not stupid. I knew that I could not offend the public, so I did not hesitate to divide Dawu's business. This was a tactic, a way for me to gain a foothold in the south of the city.
Who is Chang Bo?
He has been rolling in the stormy world for decades and still stands proudly at the top.
How could he not be able to see through these petty tactics of mine? Thank you for the praise, Chang Bo. I smiled and said. Okay, don't be complacent, I have a difficult problem to teach you.
Chang Bo laughed twice and said directly, I have a difficult problem to teach you.
Hearing his words, my heart suddenly felt a little headache. What is the difficult problem that Chang Bo is talking about? Chang Bo, you have helped me so much, so if there is anything you need, just tell me. As long as I can do it, I, Chong'an, will definitely not hesitate. I said directly to Chang Bo without the slightest hesitation. Although Chang Bo and I are not very familiar with each other, the fact that he can give me this project is already a great favor to me. No matter how much money I can make from this project, it doesn't really matter. The greatest significance is that from now on, I will have a place in the circle of these top figures in Hangzhou. To put it bluntly, this project is an olive branch thrown to me by Chang Bo. How can I not repay his kindness? But despite what I said, I still feel a bit unsure in my heart. Chang Bo is so capable, and he still thinks it's a difficult problem, so it's even more difficult for me to solve. Haha, don't worry, it's not like you have to go through fire and water, you just have to help arrange someone. Chang Bo said with a smile. Does Chang Bo want me to get rid of someone? I frowned and asked him. Young man, don't think about fighting and killing, I'm not asking you to move anyone, but to arrange someone. Chang Bo said. Who? I asked Chang Bo curiously.
Since Chang Bo personally called me, it proves that this person is relatively important to him.
What does Chang Bo want me to arrange?
A young man, his brother-in-law is the mayor of the Chong'an district, Wu Chunsheng, asked me to find a job for his brother-in-law.
Didn't you just take over the casino at Diwu? Can you do it? Chang Bo's tone was relaxed, with a hint of a smile. Wu Chunsheng's brother-in-law. Hearing this name, I immediately understood why Chang Bo specifically called me. Wu Chunsheng is the district chief here. If I hang around in the south of the city in the future, I'll be looking for death. Begging for food on someone's turf.
Those who hang around on the streets must remember one truth: don't ever go head-to-head with the officials unless you have no other choice.
Because you simply can't touch them.
You're risking your life to fight them, and they only need to say one word to send you to hell.
It's simply not on the same level. So if you want to be a thug, you must buy the officials' favor.
Chang Bo was able to win the bid for the reconstruction project here, and I think Wu Chunsheng also played a big part. Now Wu Chunsheng is asking Chang Bo to arrange a job for his brother-in-law, so Chang Bo has asked me to take care of this matter. After all, I'm now hanging out in the south of the city, and it will be a lot easier in the future to get along with Wu Chunsheng. No matter how you look at it, Chang Bo is taking care of me.
Chapter 120, Cheating.
Good Chang Bo, I just took over this casino and I'm in need of people, so let him come work for me as a manager, I said with a smile. Since the other person is Wu Chunsheng's brother-in-law, it would be unreasonable to just give him a random job.
But if I really give him any real power, I won't feel at ease.
So after thinking about it, I simply let him be the honorary manager of the casino, and just feed and clothe this person. As for what goes on inside the casino, Zhao Yuejin will still be in charge.
Okay, in that case, I'll send someone over this afternoon. Chang Bo hung up the phone.
After hanging up, I went to find Zhao Yuejin and told him what had happened. Zhao Yuejin is a smart man and of course knew that I couldn't refuse this. He smiled and nodded, saying that when my brother-in-law arrived, he would definitely take care of him and treat him like a god. In the afternoon, a person who looked to be under 30 years old walked casually into the casino. As soon as he entered, he asked for Chen Chang'an by name. A few waiters were terrified and thought someone had come to cause trouble, so they quickly called me out. When I walked out, I saw that the person had a gray buzz cut, was wearing jeans with holes in them, and had an earring in his ear. I was a little surprised, thinking to myself that I hadn't had much to do with this type of guy. Where did he come from?
I'm Chen Chang'an, and you are? I looked at the guy and asked him with a frown.
The kid chewed gum and blew a bubble, saying nonchalantly, "My name is Zhou Lei, my brother-in-law told me to find you."
Your brother-in-law? I was a little confused. Yes, my brother-in-law is Wu Chunsheng, I said while swinging my legs. Hearing the name Wu Chunsheng, I finally came back to my senses.
It turned out to be this ancestor who had come. Looking at this young guy in good spirits, I really couldn't imagine in my heart that Wu Chunsheng was at least a district chief, and how his younger brother-in-law looked like this.
Hello, it turns out to be Zhou Laudi, I was waiting for you.
I quickly forced a smile and held out my hand to shake hands with him. Zhou Lei let go of my hand and looked around.
Your casino looks pretty good, it's just a bit small, but it'll do.
Zhao Yuejin and I exchanged glances, both of us smiling wryly. It seems that this guy is still a bit of a pushover. Damn it, he's already acting like a big shot since he just got here. Don't let him cause any trouble. Chong'an, since my brother-in-law asked me to come here, you're my boss from now on. Just tell me what to do. If I frown once, I'm not a man. He then turned to me and said. I looked at this energetic young man in front of me and almost burst out laughing. This big shot really has an unusual personality. I quickly pulled him into the office and told him that from now on he would be the deputy manager here. Usually there is nothing to do, just wander around the factory, and I will pay him 30,000 yuan a month. Okay, and good, since you think so highly of me, I will work hard for you. If anyone dares to make trouble here, I will be the first to fight with him. Zhou Lei said to me with some excitement. No, if someone makes trouble, just tell them off, you don't need to get involved. I quickly told him. He is the brother-in-law of the district chief. If there is really a fight, I dare not let this gentleman go first. I asked Zhao Yuejin to take Zhou Lei for a walk inside the venue first. At first, I was worried that inviting such a troublesome person would cause trouble for me. But now, seeing Zhou Lei's performance, I feel that I was worrying for nothing. Zhou Lei is a person who is carefree and has no ulterior motives, and Zhao Yuejin is best at handling this kind of person. I believe that if you put him in Zhao Yuejin's hands, in less than 2 days, he will be completely obedient. Casinos are different from other venues. Bars, karaoke bars, and other venues basically stay open until late at night, and sometimes even overnight. Casinos, on the other hand, basically close by early morning. Business was good tonight, with all of the dozen or so private rooms full and many people in the lobby. Someone is cheating in our casino. At this time, a waiter pushed open the door to my office and walked in. I glanced at him and remembered this person, named Lu Hong, who was an old hand at the casino and a master of gambling. What? Someone is cheating. Hearing Lu Hong's words, I was furious. Today is the first day I took over the casino, and someone actually dared to make trouble here, which is equivalent to slapping me in the face. Let's go and take a look. I walked directly out of the office and arrived at the surveillance room. Standing in front of the surveillance monitor, Lu Hong pointed at a young man on the screen and said to me, Ange, this is the person. I looked towards the screen and was a little surprised. I had originally thought that the person cheating at cards would look like an old gambler. Unexpectedly, the person in the surveillance footage was a young man, looking about 24 or 25 years old, very refined, wearing glasses, and gentle and refined, not at all looking like a gambler, more like a college student. At this time, the surveillance camera was already trained on him, and no one else could see it, but we could clearly see that his hand was under the table, and when he raised his hand, he had already silently taken out a playing card. This guy has already won more than 50,000 today. He's very low-key, and he hasn't kept winning. He loses occasionally, but I still found out. Lu Hong said with some pride. I stared at the surveillance screen and could tell that the person was really careful and cautious, and the average person would never notice his little actions. But unfortunately, what kind of place is this? This is a casino. These waiters are all old pros, how can ordinary tricks fool their eyes? Find 2 people and take him to my office, be careful not to alarm the other guests. I said to Lu Hong. Lu Hong nodded and walked out with 2 waiters. After about 10 minutes, the door to my office was pushed open again, and the young man who had been cheating was pushed in by Lu Hong. What are you doing? The young man who was pushed in had a pale face and asked in a panic. I smiled at him and said, Young man, which gang are you from? You've got some nerve, running here to cheat me. Do you not like your life?